Chapter 61. The Ancient One was confused. After arriving in Westchester, New York, the Ancient One was completely stunned. Originally, this was a small forest, but since the construction of Karazhan, the entire area had been bulldozed. To be precise, an open space of about 10 hectares had been cleared in the middle, with forests surrounding it. But now, that 10-hectare open space had disappeared. Not only had the entire Mage Tower vanished, but even the open space was once again covered by dense trees. It was as if the trees had sprung up again in an instant. She knew very well that something was definitely wrong, but she was surprised to find that she couldn't see through it. It was absolutely impossible for those trees to grow out of thin air. Was it an illusion? The Ancient One descended slowly, but the feeling of touching the ground was so real. Strange, something's wrong. Her eyes trembled suddenly. The more real it seemed, the less real it felt. Then she realized that she seemed to be lost in this forest and couldn't tell the direction. Mirror dimension! With a crackling sound, the trees were moved away in an instant, and she finally escaped from the forest. After leaving that circle, her sense of direction was restored. Interesting, it seems that this is the function of those spells. At that moment, she suddenly felt a sense of dread, as if being stared at by a fierce beast that had awakened from ancient times. She didn't know where the opponent was, but if she didn't run, she would probably die, or at least be seriously injured. In an instant, she fled a kilometer away, but the feeling of being locked by the beast was still there, so she continued to flee. It wasn't until she was 5 kilometers away that the feeling of being watched gradually disappeared. The Ancient One was sweating all over her back. There was definitely something wrong there. This feeling was very similar to the terrifying aura that erupted when Karazhan was first built. In fact, she had long known that Duke was building a mage tower. Although the scale was very grand and the tower was taller than her 3 mage temples, she didn't care. To put it simply, the mage tower was just a place where mages practiced, but unfortunately she misunderstood it. The mage tower in World of Warcraft is different from Marvel's Mage Temple. You can understand it as the Railgun Max version. That's right, it's the weapon in Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen, that smashed the Decepticon Devastator that demolished the pyramid. Super powerful. But Karazhan is even better than that. It's the Max version, more than twice as strong. When Karazhan was first built, although Duke would arrange some spells from time to time, it didn't arouse her vigilance. It wasn't until the construction of Karazhan was completed and the Red Dragon Essence, as the power core of the entire Mage Tower, was installed and activated, that the entire tower changed from a place of residence to a strategic weapon. The moment the Red Dragon Essence connected to the entire Mage Tower, the terrifying aura that erupted made her, who was in the New York Temple at that time, feel a little oppressed, and her chest sank. Although she didn't know where Karazhan would attack from, she knew very well that even if she resisted a blow forcefully, she would be seriously injured if she didn't die. It now appeared that Karazhan had not disappeared but had hidden itself. As for where, it was probably still in place, but outsiders couldn't see it. Although the composition of those spell formulas was very simple, they were different from the magic words she recognized. Although she copied a part of it back, after 2 years, she was still just stumbling through it. After confirming that Karazhan hadn't disappeared but just hidden, the Ancient One returned to the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. Unless she could thoroughly study the magic words of the spell formula, it would be impossible to decipher it and find the exact location of Karazhan. There, only 10 hectares of land there, but under the effect of the magic formula, it may expand to no more than 100 hectares. A room that is only 10 square meters can instantly become 100 square meters once the surgery is activated. So, don't be deceived by Karazhan's appearance. It may look tall from the outside, standing at 66 meters, but its true expanse is hidden within. Space expansion and compression are at play here. Herald, Supreme Mage. The guardian mage of the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York is named Herald. Karazhan is still there, but for some reason, we can't see it. You can't see it either? Guyi asked, not feeling ashamed. Yes, Herald confirmed. The magic called Duke is different from our system, and even I can't break his magic quickly. This is. Don't worry, Guyi reassured him. Keep a close eye on the 4 people in Karajan, but don't take any drastic actions to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Just monitor their daily activities and notify me immediately if anything important happens. Understood. Guyi nodded and left. He needed to return to Kamartaj to study those strange magic characters. So far, he had only deciphered less than 1/20th of them. He would watch Duke draw the spells, but he could only catch about 10% of them. After all, he couldn't always pinpoint Duke's exact location. Hiding in the mirror dimension, Duke couldn't see him at all, so he couldn't move. This was the difference in their ranks. Of course, Guyi couldn't imagine that Duke already knew he was there, thanks to a system hint. Although Duke was aware of Guyi's presence, he couldn't catch him, and he wasn't Guyi's match at that time. Moreover, he didn't want to become Guyi's enemy. The magic text of Fairy Tale had never appeared in this world, so he wasn't worried about Guyi deciphering it. At the time of crossing, only 20% of the Oracle Bone inscriptions had been cracked, and 80% remained undeciphered. But now, the symbols carved on the Oracle Bones might not even be confirmed as Shang Dynasty characters. Words evolve, and through repeated deduction, they can always be deciphered. But a text that has never appeared in this world? Where would you even begin to decipher it? Guyi managing to decipher 1/20th of it was already impressive. Karajan's disappearance not only attracted Guyi's attention, but also that of the other 3 major families in New York, Wayne, Kane, and Osborne. They had some ulterior motives. With Duke's indirect help, the Stark family had developed rapidly over the past 2 years, arousing the vigilance of the other 3 families. They considered taking advantage of Karazhan's disappearance to bring down the Stark family. However, they quickly abandoned this idea when they noticed that Diana, Doutzing's Harlos, were still in Hell's Kitchen the next day. Only Duke had disappeared. It was better to act cautiously until they understood the situation. No one knew that Duke was already roaming in another universe at this time. This was a small, idyllic universe. Stop! Who dares to invade the soul world? Invasion? Would someone invade our place? It's a new partner. Oh, it seems someone was sacrificed to the gem again. Duke was bewildered. Where had he ended up? End of this chapter. Chapter 62, 1943. In 1943, a pivotal moment in history, Howard Stark, a 30-year-old man with a mustache that could make women swoon, was deep in his laboratory researching anti-gravity technology. Suddenly, he removed his goggles with a start. What? You said Karazhan reappeared? Yes, just now. Simultaneously, the Wayne, Kane, and Osborne families also received the signal. It's so strange that after 21 years it finally appeared. It seems that there will be infinite variables again. He can cooperate with the Stark family. Why can't he choose the Osborne family? Indeed, after 21 years, the Karazhan Mage Tower, which had faded from the memories of a generation, reappeared. Many had passed away, and many had forgotten it. But today, it reemerged in the world. In fact, apart from the 3-person team in Karajan who knew about it, only Howard Stark and the ancient first-class core mage knew that Karajan had never disappeared. It had always been there, just invisible. 21 years had passed, and Howard's father, Robert Stark, had also passed away just a year ago, succumbing to disease. Before Duke decided to sleep, he left Robert a potion that could treat stubborn diseases below cancer. Even if it was cancer, there was a 50% chance of recovery. The potion could even heal severe injuries unless the brain was blown out or the heart was pierced. But unfortunately, Robert Stark died of cancer, not choosing the 50% chance of hope. After 20 years, Duke still hadn't shown up. No one knew when he would return, so Robert left the precious potion to his son. He was already over 60 years old. Even if he survived by luck, how many years could he live? His son was still young and needed it more in case of any eventuality. A true father. Similarly, Guyi, who was far away in Karmataj, also received the news and appeared in New York again. Just as he arrived in New York, his brows furrowed suddenly. He actually advanced to legend? To be honest, hero-level strength was nothing in the eyes of the demigod-level Guyi, so she didn't intervene when Duke was tinkering with the Mage Tower. A hero level was just a matter of waving her hands to kill. But the legendary realm was completely different. The legendary realm was enough to defend a country. How many legends are there on Earth now? She was the only demigod. Except for those who were hidden from the world, the legendary realm included only Diana of the Amazon. In other words, there were only 2 legends active in the outside world, and they were still couples. This had to attract her attention. P.S. There are very few legends nowadays, so there are many in later generations: Magneto, Professor X, Phoenix Girl, Doctor Strange, Thor, etc. Duke felt like he had slept for a long, long time and had a long, long dream. The key dream was very clear, and his brain felt a little tired. After opening his eyes and waking up, Duke found that the heroine was sitting at the next table, seemingly writing something. He didn't speak, just lay there and watched quietly. Although the two often talked and chatted in their dreams, they couldn't touch each other or smell each other's breath. Well, the female hero still had a faint ocean-style smell that was familiar to her. Diana seemed to be aware of the gaze watching her. The pen in her hand stopped suddenly, and she turned her neck with a kima, with a shua, looking stunned. Immediately, the two looked at each other and smiled. "You're awake." What are you writing?" There was no dramatic scene like in novels, where they burst into tears with excitement, jumped together excitedly, kissed, or simply got angry with Tianlei directly. Ordinary conversations were more warm. "It's nothing." Speaking of the diary she was writing, Diana blushed slightly and quickly closed it. "Do you know, I have always. When I woke up, I believed that the first person I would see would be you." Duke slowly stood up. Despite his long sleep, he showed no signs of bed sores or muscle atrophy. He stepped forward, hugged Diana from behind, and slowly opened the diary. To be honest, Duke's words were quite impactful, not at all inferior to Master Xing's famous line, "For 1 year, have you ever seen a woman with red eyes? She is suppressing her feelings." Diary, April 1943. "Ah, Duke, my dear, he has been sleeping in Karajan for 23 years. Whenever I hesitated, I would walk into his room and see him sleeping soundly. His deep sleep would put my mind at ease. I would leave my fear and confusion behind, and then go back to continue guarding the world. Have you ever loved someone like this?" I was suddenly moved. "Is there any reason not to be?" "Wife." Duke's eyes were also a little moist. He didn't expect the heroine's feelings for him to be so genuine. "I love you." "Then what are you waiting for?" Facts have proven that some interruptions are truly unavoidable. For example, when kissing, there always seems to be a third party jumping out to disrupt the situation. Like in Reunion 3, when Star-Lord and Gamora were having a moment, Drax stood not far away eating peanut candy. Another example. "Hey Duke, Karazhan has recovered, aren't you?" "Ah, excuse me. Doubts and Carlos jumped out and then disappeared faster than before. The two were speechless. Just when the feelings were permeating, and then continued. Swish! Samir walked over with magical steps. "Boss, I saw it from a distance. Sorry, excuse me, I will disappear immediately," he said, and swish, ran away. After 2 interruptions, the charming feelings that had just been building instantly collapsed, and neither felt like continuing to kiss. "Have you advanced? Why is there no obvious change?" Diana stood up from her seat, took 2 steps back, and looked him up and down carefully. "But the arcane light in your eyes is more restrained now." "Well, I've already reached the realm of legend, and I won't be easily defeated by you this time." Duke flexed his biceps and smiled. "Oh, is that so? Let's go to the martial arts arena?" Diana smiled mischievously. "Let's go." He also wanted to test how far the gap was between being a hero and a heroine after becoming a legend. Of course, in terms of realm alone, he had just entered the middle stage of legend. As for Diana, she had already reached the pinnacle of legend and was only 1 step away from entering the demigod realm. Of course, demigods are not so easy to achieve. The ancient one also took 100 years. Even if Diana had the blood of Zeus, it didn't mean she could achieve it just by saying so. On the way to the martial arts field, Duke suddenly remembered a question. Is it 1943 now? He had slept for 21 years. Wait a minute. This timing of waking up is really good, just in time for the birth of Captain America. He vaguely remembered that Captain America Steve signed up for the Army on June 14, 1943, but was rejected. End of this chapter. Chapter 63, Mage vs. Warrior. Steve Rogers, in the U.S. team version, signed up to join the Army on June 6, 1943, but was rejected. The next night, at the World Expo, he was spotted by Dr. Abraham Erskine and joined the Strategic Science Reserve Team. This unit was later reorganized after the war and became the Science and Technology Department of S.H.I.E.L.D. In 1943, the Tomorrowland World Expo did not exist on the original Earth. The New York World Expo was held in 1939. It was less than 2 months before Steve joined the Army. Duke stretched his muscles in the martial arts arena, feeling his strength had indeed increased. He was now a great magician in the legendary realm, comparable to Khadgar. Duchin, Carlos, and Samir appeared out of nowhere and stood outside the martial arts arena, ready to fight. Over the past 2 years, Duke and Diana had practiced together, but Duke often lost. Even when he occasionally won, it was because Diana had gone easy on him. After all, the difference between a hero and a legend was significant. After waking up from a 21-year sleep, Samir could no longer gauge the extent of Duke's strength. Before falling asleep, he had looked up to Duke like a child standing before a mountain. Now, he had grown into a small hill, but Duke had become an unmeasurable force. Samir realized that Duke's current state was beyond his reach, so high that he could no longer look up to him. "Are you ready?" Diana asked. "What?" Duke responded, but Diana didn't wait for an answer and rushed forward. "Wait a minute," Duke exclaimed, feeling a sudden twinge in his waist. "Ice shield, flame bodyguard, arcane barrier," Duke chanted, raising his hand to cast a triple shield on himself. As expected of Medivh's inheritance, he was proficient in ice, flame, and arcane magic. Samir covered his face, unable to watch. Dushan Carlos was dumbfounded, not expecting such a shameless display. Diana was also speechless. "On the battlefield, the enemy won't give you time to prepare," she said, looking at the 3 oval shields, blue, red, and purple, that enveloped Duke. "I know, I just want to test my mana conversion. It's time to start," Duke replied, waving his hand. His magic system was different from Marvel's mages. If one could look inside, they would see 4 magic cores in his body: the Frozen Throne, Arcane Light, and Flame Heart arranged in a triangle, with a dark vortex in the middle connecting them. Before his long sleep, he could only use a single type of magic at a time, and had to switch cores for different types, which took time and risked mana burn. But now, his core conversion was instant. The arcane, frost, and fire systems were all connected through the dark vortex, allowing him to call upon all 3 types of magic simultaneously. Diana finally became serious, realizing that Duke's abilities had evolved. Before, he could only cover himself with a single shield, but now he could do so instantly. "Then here I come," Diana said, preparing for the battle. As soon as the voice fell, he pointed his toe sharply and rushed directly towards Duke. Halfway through, he transformed into a Wonder Woman combat suit, complete with swords, shields, and armor. The Godslayer's sword had been broken during the battle with Ares, but this new sword was forged by an old master in Chinatown and later strengthened by Duke's enchantment. In ancient times, it would have surpassed the top 10 divine swords. As we all know, when a warrior faces a mage, the warrior must close the distance, while the mage must keep it. Just as Diana rushed forward to test the hardness of the 3 turtle shells, a playful smile crossed the corner of Duke's mouth, and his arms shook violently. "Frost Nova!" A bitter cold air suddenly spread from Duke's feet to the surroundings. Diana seemed to be covered with a light blue protective film. The speed visible to the naked eye quickly froze her feet and spread to her knees. "What the hell is this?" Diana was a little dazed. Duke had never used this skill before. It was a pure arca, knee attack. With a whoosh sound, Duke floated nearly 100 meters away. "Honey, I won't show mercy." Diana was surprised to find that she couldn't break free instantly. The ice seemed to be more than just traditional ice. Duke slowly rubbed his hands together, and a blue light flashed. Double frost arrows, whizzing. Immobilized and unable to dodge, Diana had to pick up her shield to block one arrow while chopping the other with her sword. She noticed that the blue light on her body seemed to deepen, further reducing her reaction and speed. Although the decline was minimal, it was noticeable. The ice system had the effect of slowing her down. One after another, my dear, 3 frost arrows. 3 cold arrows shot up and down, aiming at her head, chest, and stomach, respectively. With lessons learned from the past, Diana didn't foolishly use her shield to resist. She had discovered that blocking would slow her down, but chopping wouldn't. She slashed out with her sword, ready to smash the 3 frost arrows. However, the arrows were not the same speed, fast, medium, and slow. She needed 3 swords to split them completely. Duke laughed again. Wife, be careful. Unrest magic. Burst! 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 The turbulent magic caused the frostbolts to explode in sequence in front of Diana. Countless frost and icicles violently exploded towards the surroundings. Diana was shocked and quickly raised her shield to protect herself. Countless ice knives hit the shield and armor, crackling. Fortunately, the freezing effect of Frost Nova finally dissipated. Diana twisted her body and flashed out from the range of the ice blast, a smile on her face. I have to say, you have become a lot stronger. It's nothing. Oh? A ray of blue light rose from Duke's feet to his head, immediately forming a rune shape of a frosty head. Duke smiled. Ah, Buff is here. Many readers are very concerned about the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on the construction of the Mage Tower. To be honest, this is Marvel Earth, and it is not just Marvel, but also the fictional world that DC and others have integrated into. As far as Marvel's technology and wealth are concerned, it is many years ahead of our Earth. How many years ahead? That depends on your perspective. The 4 big families I set up are very rich, and we really don't understand the world of the wealthy. In fact, you don't need to worry too much about the specifics, because I don't know what the purchasing power of US dollars was like on Earth 100 years ago. This is the Marvel world, and Earth can only be used as a reference point. I've done a lot of research, but I still couldn't figure it out. Does anyone know? Can someone with expertise explain it? All I know is that in the 1990s, a popsicle cost 1 cent, but now it costs at least 1 yuan. Let's say the price increased 20 times in 10 years. So, a popsicle might have cost 70 cents in the 1970s, or 50 cents in the 1950s. As for the 1930s, I have no idea how to calculate that, so let's not consider the early 20th century. And this is based on our country's economy. I don't know if the United States experienced the same changes. Nowadays, it costs $5 million to build a tower. If we reduce that by 10 times for the 1990s, it would be $500,000. So, $70 million in the 1950s, $50 million in the 1930s? What about the 1920s? $30 million. I want to write it like this, but does it sound too crazy? I don't know what it was like back then, and neither do you, so let's not stress about those values. You can understand it by converting it into today's value. End of this chapter. Chapter 64. Where's my female apprentice? Ah, the buff is here, Duke smiled. Icy Wisdom. Strengthens the next ice storm, making it instant, increasing the damage done by 50% and applying the deep winter's cold to the target. Your spell treats the target as if it were a frozen unit. A frozen unit means that after the ice magic hits the enemy, it will be a critical strike. A blue light lit up on Duke's hand again. Diana was startled and hurriedly swam around, zigzagging and turning. However, she didn't rush to attack Duke. That weird frost nova had made her very cautious. Although it looked like a piece of ice on the outside, it wasn't strictly frozen. It had a hint of space in it. "Haha, dear, you are very smart, but—" "Ice storm!" Duke exclaimed. Countless small frost arrows formed 3 powerful streams of frost and blasted towards Diana. Bang! Bang! Unfortunately, the nimble female hero dodged them. This is not a game. Magic skills do not have a 100% hit rate. People can get out of the way. In the game, it is not always guaranteed to hit the enemy. It may be resisted or missed. But in reality, the enemy will run around to avoid it. Except for some special skills, most magic does not have far infrared tracking. Oh, I made a mistake. Don't you plan to come over, dear? That will make you my moving target. Duke smiled slightly. While speaking, he cast several frost arrows, ice lances, and flame impacts. Of course, they were either dodged or chopped to pieces with a sword. Obviously, the female hero was afraid of his frost nova. You are not allowed to use Frost Nova, the female hero shouted from a distance. She didn't even try to test the range of the Frost Nova. Actually, there is no fixed scope. The strength of the magic effect depends on how much magic power is injected into the spell. According to his current state in the middle stage of the legend, if he injected all his mana into the Frost Nova, it shouldn't be very difficult to freeze the entire New York. Similar to Aokiji's big move, Ice Age. Similarly, the Frostbolt can also be turned into an ice railgun to penetrate a mountain. What he was using now was only to maintain the most basic magic value of the skill. Of course, no fool would really play like this. Injecting all the magic power into a magic skill program requires very high control and precision. In fact, magic skills still have a basic attack limit. This limit will continue to change with your rank and other factors. For example, if the upper limit of the Frost Nova of a legendary early mage is 100 meters, expanding it to 200 meters would result in being killed by the magic backlash. Okay, I won't use Frost Nova, Duke nodded. This was not a battle of life and death, but just a test of his ability. The other party was his wife. Would he really harm her? Isn't he the one who would ruin her little face? Are you serious? Of course. That's good. Diana pounced forward again. Duke didn't seem to realize that the time of his three-line shield was over. The heroine may not understand a simple truth. A man's word is often deceptive. Summon, water elemental, Duke chanted. Dutchin, Carlos, and Samir, who were watching the battle from a distance, were dumbfounded. What kind of creature is this? Not only the two of them, but Diana, who was rushing over, was also stunned. It seemed to be a creature made entirely of flowing water. The first time he tried to summon the water element, Duke was also a little confused. He discovered that the water element was not like in the game, with a huge body, two bigger arms, and a small head. The chassis had no legs but was connected to the ground by water vapor. The color was not green either. It was water, no color. If you had to talk about the color, it was white, because the fine bubbles that flowed and churned were white. The water element Duke summoned was smoother, without so many obvious edges, corners, thorns, and the like. In terms of appearance, it was also a rounded Q version. Duke, It'll surprised, still waved his hand. Freezing technique. Kacha. The heroine's legs were frozen again. What the hell? You're lying, Diana protested. No, this is not Frost Nova, but my water element's freezing. No cheating, Duke shrugged and laughed. You? The heroine was too angry to speak. Okay, I'll wait for it to disperse before attacking, Duke shrugged again. Diana immediately realized that this spell had a time limit. In about 20 seconds, the ice seal disappeared. 20 seconds. The previous Frost Nova broke open in just 10 seconds. Is it because of different skills, or will it speed up the disappearance of the ice seal after being hit again? She wondered. The woman rushed forward again, but this time she didn't go straight. Instead, she used a trick, repeatedly jumping left and right. Frozen Orb, Duke cast. A huge ice ball rushed out, spinning and advancing in a straight line. Not only that, while spinning rapidly, it also scattered frost, ice blades, and other icy projectiles around, like an ice tornado. The woman was surprised to find that her speed dropped by nearly half, but she suddenly discovered one thing. Duke's magic couldn't control the air. So, she jumped up with a sudden stomp on the ground and slashed at Duke. You want my life, Duke chuckled. But he didn't dodge. Instead he said, Summon, Earth Element. That's right, it was the Earth Element of the Shaman. You might ask, why do mages know shaman skills? That's just a game designed for professional balance. Otherwise, why can only ice magic summon water elements among the 3 departments of mages, but the fire department can't summon fire elements, and arcane magic can't summon arcane puppets? Magic is the element that controls the natural world, and the earth element is one of them. Is it strange to summon an earth element? Duke could not only summon earth elements, but also wind elements and more. Boom, an extremely burly earth element composed of large and small rocks crawled out from the ground. Before it could climb out completely, its huge stone arm lifted up and grabbed the long sword that was swung down. Click! The long sword snapped, and a piece of the earth elemental's hand was cut off. However, they are not carbon-based life forms and do not feel pain. As long as the elemental core is not destroyed, they will recover infinitely. For example, now it grabbed soil directly from the ground, and then the cut-off hand grew out again. Duch, Carlos, and Samir continued to be dumbfounded. Diana was stunned for a moment, but instead of retreating, she punched the earth element away after landing. Then she punched Duke again. "Okay, I lost," Duke said, not injured. He got up from a distance and patted the dust off his body. He just wanted to test his own level, not fight to the death with the heroine. If it were a fight to the death, the heroine would have been seriously injured at the beginning. Ice Bomb. Place the ice bomb directly in the target's body for 12 seconds. Within 12 seconds, it will gradually freeze and immobilize the target. After the time is up, it will explode instantly, causing a violent ice explosion, which will erupt immediately with an ice tide, causing strong frost damage to the attack range. Diana was just interested in Duke's new magic. By the way, where is my female apprentice? Mentioning this, everyone's expression suddenly changed. Even Diana looked concerned. End of this chapter. Chapter 65. Lotus. Seeing the expressions on their faces, Duke's heart sank. "What happened?" he demanded. Samir and Dotson Carlos remained silent, their faces grim. Finally, Diana nodded lightly. "Yes." Duke's face turned cold, and a murderous aura surged from him. "What's the result?" he asked, his voice icy. Unable to bear the pressure, Samir and Dotson Carlos knelt on the ground. Diana hurriedly stepped forward to comfort him. "Don't get excited. Stone City is fine." Duke's murderous aura dissipated slightly at her words. If something had truly happened to Stone City, he wouldn't have hesitated to go to Japan himself. The two men quickly stood up and fled the room. "Leon, what's the matter?" Duke asked, his voice softer now. Diana's eyes turned red as she began to explain. "Leon is good. At the end of the year, the Japanese army stormed Stone City. Thanks to Leon and her partners, the Japanese forces were successfully blocked outside the city. Most of the troops from the 10th Division and the 3rd Division were killed outside the city. They bought crucial time for the defenders of Stone City, and the Japanese army failed to capture even an inch of it." Duke's eyes reddened with emotion. "Well done, you are indeed my apprentice," he exclaimed, punching the air. In the original timeline, the 10th and 3rd Divisions had been the most ruthless after invading Stone City. Although this world was different, he was relieved to see them pay the price they deserved. Lian was a vagrant he had met in Chinatown. At that time, he had gone to the old master to commission a steel sword for the heroine. Lian had been dirty, looking no older than 10, unkempt and emaciated from days without food. Her little face had been more deflated than Howard Stark's at his lowest point. What had surprised Duke the most was that, despite being kicked and beaten by locals, she had remained silent. What had truly attracted him were Leon's eyes. Despite her dirty appearance, her eyes were bright, clean, and full of energy, not the gloomy eyes of a street beggar who had lost all hope. She was stubborn and proud, still confident in life. When Duke had offered her food, she had licked her lips but turned her head away, refusing the alms despite her hunger. Finding the little beggar interesting, Duke had accepted her as his apprentice, mainly because of her magical aptitude, which was better than Samir's, rated at B+. He hadn't found a suitable magic seed in Xiangdao and had never expected to find one in the United States. Her loyalty had grown quickly, reaching 90% in just 1 month. Duke had then taught her magic from the fairy tale universe, finding it very suitable for apprentices. Lian Chiyu, a mage belonging to the Blue Pegasus Guild, specialized in air magic and reading words. Her magic could destroy space and remove oxygen, making it a difficult type to deal with. Magic abilities. Conversation. Can communicate with a designated target. Turning. Traps the target in an air barrier, making the oxygen thin and causing dizziness and difficulty breathing. Turning Shot. Makes nearby rocks float and uses air to propel them at the opponent. Empty Magic Ball. Creates an air sphere to wrap herself and her partners, allowing them to move freely and quickly in the air. Empty Illusion. Creates an air sphere centered on herself, expanding outward to cause a strong impact. Other skills includes Air Burst, Empty Shield, and more, making it a versatile magic for both attack and defense. The name Leon had been given to her by Duke, as the little beggar had either not had a name or had refused to use her old one. Duke had chosen Lian Chiue for her. About 2 months before Duke's deep sleep, Lian was arranged to go to Stone City. She was an exceptionally talented girl, having reached the strength of the late elite in just a few months. Coupled with the unique nature of her magic, bullets might not even harm her. Despite her appearance as a 12-year-old child, seemingly easy to be trafficked, she was formidable enough to ruin the lives of those who might try to harm her. Therefore, Duke was not worried about Lian's safety. He explained to her what might happen in the future. Lian didn't say a word. She simply packed her luggage and set off for a foreign land with determination. Although she was Chinese, she had never set foot in her homeland before. Before she left, Duke gave her a piece of red crystal, a small piece of blue dragon essence, some magic props that didn't require a lot of talent points, and various magic scrolls he had made. These included defensive, offensive, and supportive scrolls. Although the blue dragon essence was a small piece, it contained a vast amount of magic power, enough for her to grow. 21 years have passed, and she is now 33 years old. "Where's Lian? She's dead, right?" Duke asked calmly. "Yeah," Diana replied, lowering her head, her face full of apology. "We were delayed for a day, and by the time we arrived at Stone City, the battle was over. According to the people in the city, Lian had almost overdrawn her magic. A master of the Japanese army appeared, and after a fierce battle, both of them died together." Duke hadn't told her the details about Stone City, but Diana had guessed it from the subsequent changes in the situation. She realized that Duke had placed Lian in Stone City years ago, likely to guard against the Japanese army. She hurried over with Samir and Duchen Carlos. In Karazhan, Wika was taking care of things, so she wasn't worried. Unfortunately, they were still a day late. Duke's face was extremely gloomy. Her body was buried in the city by the people of Stone City, and they built a temple for her to be enshrined with incense. After standing in the temple for 7 days without any signs of decay, the people of Stone City began to worship her as the Lotus Fairy, and the temple was named Lotus Fairy Temple, Diana explained. "Did you leave her body there?" Duke frowned. Lian had lived there for 21 years, and it could be considered her home. She must have had feelings for the place, so she should be buried there. "Did you see the ruby crystal on her?" Duke asked. Diana thought for a moment, then shook her head. No. She remembered that Duke had given Lian a ruby crystal when she set off. This item was not uncommon in Karazhan. The core of Karazhan was a huge piece of red dragon essence, followed by ruby crystals that spread throughout Karazhan. Then there were mana rubies, and finally, mana essence. "No?" Duke's frown deepened. "Are you sure?" "Something was wrong." "Definitely," Diana nodded. "Initially, we wanted to bring Lian's body back, but the people in Stone City resisted. We looked carefully and found that she did not have a ruby crystal on her. To be precise, she had nothing but a simple pink costume." Duke's face changed suddenly. "Bastard! Someone dares to steal my things? It seems that I have to go to Stone City." In Karmatage, in the training room where Guyi meditated, a piece of red crystal was spinning slowly. End of this chapter. Chapter 66. Wake Up, Lian. As the core of Karazhan, the red dragon essence is a super high-level magic essence that can only be condensed after the death of an ancient red dragon. The red jade crystal is a magical crystal created by Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder and Red Dragon Queen, one of the guardian dragons with demigod strength. You can think of the Red Dragon Queen as the life giver and the ancient dragon who guards life. The infinite lifespan of the night elves comes from her. Therefore, the ruby crystal contains a powerful vitality. If a magician channels life force from it, even a dying person can be revived instantly. However, this ruby crystal has been transformed by Duke into a container that can inhabit a soul, and it is bound to Lian. This means that if Lian encounters an accident, her soul will be absorbed by the ruby crystal instantly upon her death, sealing itself completely. The abundant vitality within will nourish the soul. At first glance, it appears to be just a piece of red crystal or ruby, but the red is very pure, without a trace of impurities. This thing is very valuable and could easily arouse the covetousness of bad guys. Duke had told Lian to carry it with her at all times, and the obedient Lian would never throw it aside. Therefore, he subconsciously thought that someone had stolen it. In Kamatage, the Ancient One woke up from meditation and saw this red and pure crystal. She had picked it up from the battlefield outside Stone City 6 years ago. At that time, she was in the temple of Xiangdao and felt a large-scale riot of magical power, so she hurried over. Although she does not intervene in human wars, she is very concerned about magical events. When she arrived at Stone City, the battle had just ended. Leon had fallen from the sky, and the Japanese master had exploded and died. She wanted to save Leon, but the next moment she felt that Leon was already dead before landing. She could only make her fall to the ground slowly, so that the body did not fall out of shape. Then a large number of people from Stone City poured out, knelt down in front of Leon's body, and cried. The 70-year-old man cried like a child and welcomed Leon's body into the city with the highest ceremony. No need to look, the Ancient One also knew what had happened. Looking at the tragic situation of the Japanese army outside the city, although she doesn't intervene in human wars and doesn't want magicians to be used as tools for power struggles, she still admires those who sacrifice themselves for the common people. Another genius had fallen. She arrived too late. Leon had already died in battle. Otherwise, she would have noticed that Leon's magic system was very similar to Duke's. Unfortunately, when she arrived, the magic battle was over, and there was not much to see from the battlefield. Just as she was feeling emotional and turned around to leave, she found a red crystal in a corner of the battlefield. That was when Leon was blown up with the masters of the Japanese army. In fact, Leon died at the same time as the explosion, and her soul was sucked into the ruby crystal in an instant. The Ancient One instinctively realized that this red crystal was not just an ordinary gem. If it were an ordinary mage, they might only regard this as a valuable ruby, but the Ancient One, being the supreme mage, was keenly aware of the difference. She couldn't see through it. After inhaling the soul, the ruby crystal self-sealed, and after being self-sealed, it could not be used, and there would be no leakage of life force, making it impossible for the supreme mage to see through it. This appeared to be an ordinary ruby. The Ancient One didn't know that this crystal was dropped by Leon, as it was far from where Leon had fallen. She also didn't know that this ruby crystal had something more significant within it. Duke knew he couldn't let her discover the existence of the magic crystals. It was his secret to keep. While it was acceptable for her to witness the spell, since it couldn't be deciphered anyway, such treasures were off limits. When Guyi first appeared, the system immediately detected her presence. Duke, naturally cautious, had hidden the ruby crystal carefully. Guyi, unable to discern its true nature, took the mysterious ruby back to Kamatage. For 6 years she had been unable to unravel its secrets. All she could sense was a faint dragon's roar emanating from within. Her curiosity was piqued, especially since she had encountered many dragons before. In the Marvel universe, dragons were generally considered low-level reptiles, with only a few ancient ones possessing significant combat power. However, the dragon's aura within this ruby surpassed even those ancient dragons she had encountered, such as the Dragon of Torgen from Thor 3. In fact, she had once encountered Wu Fengji, whose dragon aura was even more formidable than that of the ruby. Wu Fengji had battled an ancient dragon for 2 days and nights, ultimately comprehending the true power of dragons. The dragon's might that erupted at that moment was undoubtedly superior to the gems. Later, when the Phoenix Force arrived, Wu Fengji unleashed this immense dragon power, shattering the Phoenix Force with a single punch and subduing the Phoenix. The fragmented Phoenix Force scattered across the universe, never to reunite. A small portion of these fragments eventually fused with the mutant Jean Grey, giving rise to the powerful Phoenix Girl in X-Men. Had Wu Fengji not shattered the Phoenix Force, these Phoenix hosts would never have emerged. Afterward, Wu Fengji took the Phoenix and vanished into the void, disappearing into the depths of the universe, never to be heard from again. Reflecting on her old friend, Guyi sighed deeply. If she were to fight Wu Fengji, it would likely end in tragedy. Are you the fragments left behind from that time? Guyi mused aloud. Dragon power fragments. She had heard such rumors but had never confirmed them. Although she already possessed Phoenix Force fragments, the existence of Dragon Force fragments seemed plausible. What are you? Gu Yi muttered to herself before leaving the meditation room. Unbeknownst to her, the ruby activated shortly after her departure. Lotus! Lotus, wake up, Lian. Lotus, wake up quickly. Don't sleep anymore, Lian. I am your master. Master? Lian, lying within the ruby crystal, suddenly sat up and instinctively shouted, "Ah, master, don't hit me. I won't sleep during cultivation again." She paused, realizing that she had been away from her master for 15 years. It wasn't the time for those 2 years of practice anymore. "Ah, by the way, I seem to be dead already," she murmured. "Well, master, I completed the task you gave me. I wasn't lazy." Her memory was still stuck in the battle from 6 years ago, unaware of the time that had passed. Wait, where is this place? Leon looked around in confusion. A red mist surrounded her, obscuring her vision beyond 2 meters. Is this what hell is like? She wondered aloud. End of this chapter. Chapter 67, Visit to Kamartaj. Leon, Duke shouted loudly. What? Master, is that you? Where are you? Why can't I see you? There's a red fog around here. Only then did Leon realize that the voice she heard was not a hallucination. Master, where are you? Have you been captured by monsters again? Leon, you have to realize that you are already dead. Now you are just a soul, living in the ruby crystal I gave you, Duke explained simply. Most souls do not know they are dead after waking up from a deep sleep for several years. Moreover, after being nourished by the huge red dragon's vitality, Leon's soul had solidified quite a bit, no longer the transparency of ordinary souls. So, there's a good chance she doesn't think she's dead. He didn't tell Lion that the purpose of the ruby crystal was to ensure she wouldn't act recklessly without worries. He just told her to carry it with her at all times, even while sleeping. I see, Master. Then, I'm not in hell? Leon said, a little disappointed. Why? According to you, it seems like you're a bit unhappy? I still want to see the bull-headed and horse-faced demons, Leon said. You fool! My students are not bull-headed or horse-faced demons. I'll open your eyes. Take a good look around. I'll find you right away, Duke reprimanded, then remotely activated the red jade crystal's vision. In the next moment, the red mist around Leon sank instantly and gathered on the ground, like a stage effect made of dry ice. Her surroundings became transparent, as if she were in a glass room. If the Ancient One happened to come back, she would be surprised to see a little person looking around inside the crystal. Master, this seems to be a secret room, and I can't see anything clearly, Leon said after scanning around. Shouldn't the crystal be on me? Why can't I see myself? Ah, the crystal was stolen. Leon realized what had happened in a second. She always wore the ruby crystal around her neck as a pendant, never taking it off, even when bathing. Only when the necklace string was dirty would she remove it for cleaning, but she would use another necklace to tie the crystal and hang it around her neck during cleaning. If she had died, the crystal should have been placed in the coffin with her. What she saw should be a sealed box and her own body or her skeleton body. But now, in a secret room, and it was still regarded as a hidden treasure hanging on a stone platform. Duke was also a little surprised because he couldn't look around through the crystal. He had placed a small spell on the ruby crystal, which could be used as an eye to scan the surroundings. But now his thoughts were blocked. Clearly, where Leon was now, there was a huge barrier blocking it. He could only reluctantly activate the vision of the ruby crystal, allowing Leon to observe by herself. You are a lotus fairy now, and the people of Stone City have built a temple to worship you. Really? Leon became excited, proving that all her efforts were not in vain. However, it has been 6 years since your death, and I just woke up from being promoted as a teacher. It has been 6 years, and anything can happen. It is not surprising that the crystal was stolen. Take a closer look at that secret room. Is there anything special? Duke said. In fact, he already had a few conclusions in his mind because there were not many large-scale barriers that could block him. Master, have you advanced? Leon jumped up excitedly. Duke cursed silently. Where is your attention? Hurry up. There is an enchantment blocking us here. I can't talk to you for long. Oh, hearing this, Leon quickly looked around. Well, it's nothing special. This is a round secret room surrounded by bookshelves. It looks all heavy, very ancient books, with the feel of cowhide and parchment. Duke frowned. Pick up important, iconic, special things. Special, the sign. Leon scanned the room carefully, her eyes finally landing on something. Ah, there is an eye. Does this count, Master? An eye? Duke frowned. Is the center of that eye green and glowing? No, it seems to be made of bronze. It's a little far away, and the secret room is very dark, so I can't see it clearly, Leon replied. Ah, right. If it is the Eye of Agamotto, when it is not activated, the center is indeed not lit. Then take a closer look. Are there 4 wires protecting the pupil of that eye? Hey, really, Master, how do you know? Leon exclaimed. It really is the Eye of Agamotto. The ancient one? Okay, Master knows where you are now. Wait a minute. It seems that someone is approaching. I should have noticed it. I will temporarily seal the ruby crystal. Don't worry. I will come to pick you up soon. With that, Duke canceled the vision of the crystal, closed the ruby crystal again, and withdrew his thoughts. At the moment when all this was done, Gu Yi rushed in. Are my feelings wrong? Gu Yi muttered, looking at the ruby crystal that was still spinning slowly. He then turned and left. Karazhan. How's it going? Did you find Liane? Diana asked anxiously as Duke opened his eyes. Yes, I found her. She's in Karmataj. Karmataj? How could she be there? Diana frowned. I know it's there. It's said to be the Temple of Magicians. Their leader is a person called the Supreme Mage, who is very powerful. I know him, Duke said. Then let me go with you, Diana insisted. No, I'll go by myself. But, Duke smiled and waved his hands. Why are you panicking? It's not about fighting. I know her a little bit. Why would she attack me for no reason? Besides, I'm just going to get back what belongs to me. Why wouldn't she give it to me? But, Diana hesitated, not knowing much about Gu Yi. It's nothing to worry about. If we go together, it might show a lack of confidence, Duke said, kissing her forehead. Did you forget that if there is any danger, I can return to Karazhan instantly? No one can stop me. In fact, even if the 2 of them went to Karmataj together, they might not be able to defeat Gu Yi. Okay, then be careful. Calm down, Duke reassured her. End of this chapter. Chapter 68. Visit to Karmataj, Sanctum Sanctorum, New York. When Duke stepped inside, he was taken aback. The place was guarded by more than just one person. Well, it was probably due to budget constraints in the film that they only showed one guard. Here, there were roughly 36 people. Duke slowly emerged from the space. Who? Harold, the custodian of the Sanctum Sanctorum, instantly became alert. It's you? When he saw Duke, he was visibly confused. The other mages immediately assumed defensive stances, each holding orange circles in their hands. Harold, you know me? You've been monitoring me for 2 years, so it's not surprising that I know you, right? Duke smiled and sat down on the nearby sofa. Don't worry, take me to Karmataj. I have business with your Supreme Mage. What? Harold was puzzled. It was unusual for someone to seek out the Supreme Mage rather than the other way around. Are you serious? Of course, your Supreme Mage took something of mine, and I'm here to get it back. Nonsense. The Supreme Mage would never be greedy for your things. Harold retorted angrily. Duke narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. For now, I am still on friendly terms with Karmataj. Are you sure you want to start a war with me? As soon as he finished speaking, the arcane light in his eyes flared up, and a burst of purple light struck Harold's chest. Harold staggered back a few steps before regaining his balance. He was shocked. Is this the legendary realm? Although the Supreme Mage is a powerful demigod, she has never displayed her full strength, so he didn't know how powerful she truly was. But the person in front of him just stared at him, and he couldn't help but back up a few steps. His strength was truly unbelievable. A war? The Sanctum Sanctorum in New York would be bloodbathed in an instant. Okay, but I have to notify the Supreme Mage first. After a moment of thought, Harold decided to compromise. Given the current situation, both sides were magicians and not enemies. There was no need to provoke a strong adversary for Karmataj over a trivial matter. If it was his fault, Gu Yi would have to deal with him. Please go ahead. Duke remained seated on the sofa, calm and composed. Harold left to ask for instructions. About 3 minutes later, he returned. Please come with me. The Supreme Mage will greet you personally at Karmataj. The 3 sanctuaries are interconnected, as well as connected to other places like the sea, the desert, and so on. The portal of the temple is actually a gate that can be passed through by opening it. Upon arriving at Karmataj, Duke saw the supreme mage Guyi standing in front of a group, though he didn't recognize anyone behind her. "Welcome, Mr. Du, to Camartage." Guyi stepped forward enthusiastically and extended her hand. Duke also smiled. "Mr. Supreme Mage, you are too polite." "Mr.?" Guyi was a little taken aback. "In our culture, there is no distinction between men and women in terms of honorific titles for people who are highly respected and skilled," Duke explained with a laugh. "Mr. Du, you flatter me." Guyi was pleased, at least outwardly. Not at all. Duke was also smiling, but inwardly he was amused. Flattery works wonders. Well, she probably doesn't know that 40 years later, a teacher named Kang Ji, who is called Shuangxin of virtue and art, will be born in this world. Funny face. "Tea or coffee?" Guyi offered. "Tea, please." Seeing Guyi preparing kung fu tea, Duke smiled. "I didn't expect Mr. Supreme Mage to be knowledgeable about the tea ceremony as well." "Living for so long, one needs to cultivate some interests," Guyi said, seemingly self-deprecating, and then handed him a cup. "Is it straw?" Duke wondered as he took a sip. The taste was... Guyi noticed something off about the tea Duke was drinking. "Mate tea, from South America," she explained. "Oh," Duke responded, recognizing the tea but surprised that Guyi had brewed it like kung fu tea. "It's a bit bitter and astringent. It feels like I took a sip of grass." In his previous life, he knew this kind of tea was nutritious, but he never bought it himself, only trying it once from a friend. He didn't particularly enjoy the taste, preferring Tiguanyin instead. "P.S. Remember to pay for Tiguanyin." "Supreme Mage," Duke began. "Call me Guyi," she interrupted. "Then you can call me Duke too." "Mr. Du, it always feels like you're not calling me," Duke smiled. "Are you calling Duyetcha, Duxian?" "Duke, you said I took your stuff. I'm curious. What is it?" Guyi asked. "In a secret room where the Eye of Agamotto is stored," Duke replied. Hearing this, Guyi's expression changed. She frowned and asked, "Just now? It was you?" "Probably me," Duke said, playing coy. "Perhaps?" Guyi pressed. "Okay, if no one else came here just now, it should be me," Duke admitted, taking another sip of the yerba ma tea before putting it down. He still couldn't get used to the taste. "How do you know about the Eye of Agamotto?" Guyi asked, her tone serious. "I'm not interested in the Eye of Agamotto, but I'm curious about that piece of red crystal." "I don't know. Mr. Guyi, where did you get it?" Duke's eyes sharpened slightly as he spoke. He had made his point clear. If Guyi hadn't realized it yet, she wouldn't be easily fooled. "Is that yours?" she asked in surprise. "Yes," Duke confirmed. "However, I picked it up from the battlefield outside Stone City. In the year, the Japanese army attacked Stone City," Guyi explained. She was cautious, suspecting that the crystal might contain dragon power fragments. Duke's interest in the crystal, rather than the time stone, made her wary. She couldn't determine if he was an enemy or a friend, a good person or a bad one. She wouldn't hand over a mysterious crystal that hadn't been thoroughly studied, especially if it could be dangerous in the wrong hands. "I gave it to my apprentice, Leon. You should be familiar with this name, right?" Duke said, not in a hurry. He was indeed wary of Guyi's strength and didn't want to antagonize her. He just wanted to bring his apprentice home. It wouldn't be wise to have a bad relationship with the Supreme Mage. "Leon?" Guyi was taken aback for a moment. She understood a little now. "In the Lotus Fairy Temple in Stone City, that Lotus Fairy is your apprentice Lian?" She did know Lian. 2 years before Duke fell asleep, a little beggar was taken in Chinatown. Before Duke fell asleep, the apprentice was only on the boat, and he didn't know where she was going. Harold mainly focused on the other three and didn't pay much attention to Leon, a 12-year-old girl. In the end, he only knew that she got on the boat and left, but he couldn't find out where she went. After all, it was not the era of the real name system. For the next 21 years, he never saw the woman again in New York. It seemed she had disappeared. "So that's the case. It probably dropped during the battle, but I still need your proof if I can give it to you," Guyi said, understanding the situation. "Of course," Duke agreed. End of this chapter. Chapter 69. How much has it been cracked? "Leon, wake up," Duke said softly, reaching out to brush his fingers lightly over the ruby crystal. Guyi watched him intently, surprised to see several magic rune circles of different sizes, colors, and shapes light up on Duke's palm. Green, purple, red, yellow, blue, and more. Duke was clearly demonstrating something to Guyi. Simplified rune arrays? Guyi was taken aback. When they cast spells, they also drew similar rune formations, but they were typically orange and looked quite similar. Dukes, however, were different. Moreover, when they created rune arrays, they had to use hand movements, like drawing circles with their hands. Even Guyi, though faster and more adept than others, still had to perform these actions. But Duke seemed to conjure the magic rune circles with his mind alone, a feat requiring immense control. Even for her, it wasn't easy. It seemed he had a more convenient method. Was this a simplified version? She had no time to ponder further because the ruby crystal began to come alive. The once opaque crystal turned transparent in an instant. "Ah, master!" a tiny voice cried out. "Let me out! Master, master, let me out!" Upon closer inspection, there was a little person inside, happily patting the crystal wall. Duke sighed, a black line forming on his forehead. With a wave of his hand, Leon transformed into a wisp of red mist and floated out. Before it even touched the ground, the red mist took on a human form and leaped onto Duke, clinging to him like a sloth. "You are a 30-year-old woman. Why are you still acting like a child?" Duke chided gently. "Do you call 30 a big girl? In this day and age, you can be a grandma at 30, okay?" Leon retorted, pouting. "Master, the age of a woman is a secret. You can't say that. It will last forever." Lion jumped down angrily, still pouting. "By the way, what about your soul?" Duke looked Leon up and down, puzzled by her appearance, which still resembled a 12-year-old. "I don't know. It was like this when I woke up," Leon replied. "Is this really a soul body?" Guyi was astonished. Although she often entered the soul world, she never did so in the form of a soul. Of course, that didn't mean she couldn't. Additionally, after death or near-death experiences, souls would enter the soul world. Only those with strong obsessions could remain in this world. Ultimately, only a very small number of souls with strong obsessions and strength could communicate with others. For example, when Doctor Strange was dying, he could talk to his girlfriend. People remember the most beautiful moments before they die, and their souls become what they were at that time. It seems you took good care of your apprentice. She thinks the 2 years of practicing with you were the happiest in her life. That's why she looks like this, Guyi explained. "Oh," Duke said, understanding now. It wasn't until this moment that Leon noticed there was another person beside her. "Who are you?" "A monk. No, a nun." "Oh, I see. You stole me, right?" "How dare you speak to the Supreme Mage like that? Is this how I taught you? Be polite. It was the Supreme Mage who picked you up. Otherwise, you don't know how many times you would have been sold," Duke scolded, raising his hand and giving her a light tap on the head. "Apologize quickly." Though he appeared stern, Duke was inwardly pleased. After all, his apprentice remembered his kindness. That was enough for him as a master. "Oh, I'm sorry, Supreme Mage. I am young, and you don't remember villains," Leon said hurriedly, bowing. Duke chuckled inwardly. This little girl was quite cheeky. She should actually be 27 years old, having died 6 years ago, her age forever fixed. "It's nothing," Guyi smiled. "Is this proof enough?" Duke asked with a smile. "Of course, you can take her with you," Guyi replied. Now that the affiliation had been proven, Guyi couldn't hold back. She knew what Leon looked like. If it had been a 27-year-old appearance, she might not have recognized her, but Harold Herber had already sent back the image of a 12-year-old. And this was no illusion. Leon is indeed a soul body. After she died 6 years ago, her soul entered the crystal. She had always been curious about the power within the ruby crystal, but unfortunately, she couldn't uncover its origin. Although she suspected that Duke might have arranged for her to go to Stone City to prevent the Japanese army from attacking, this crystal was her last life-saving talisman. Could it be that he could also see the future? However, she didn't have time to ponder this further. She suddenly realized that while the soul is eternal, the body will eventually turn into a handful of rotten soil. She seemed to understand. In the not-too-distant future, although she would die physically, her soul would become the Holy Spirit, following the eternal God to travel the universe. Abandoning the flesh to pursue eternity? "Leon, you go in first. Your soul is not strong enough to cross space," Duke said. "Okay." The obedient Leon turned into a red mist and entered the ruby crystal. There was a warm feeling there, but she had gotten used to it. Then, goodbye. Duke put away the ruby crystal and was about to turn around and leave. That's right. As your reward for keeping my apprentice for 6 years, this gift is for you. He handed over a very small piece of ruby crystal, about 1/10 the size of the piece that Leon hid, roughly the size of a finger bone. It also contained a good amount of vitality. He had always been curious about why the Ancient One was killed by Caecilius in Doctor Strange. How could a mere acolyte who had just gained power from Dormammu kill the Ancient One so easily? In his opinion, the Ancient One probably did it on purpose. For some reason, she couldn't commit suicide, nor could she abandon her body to expel the shell, so she had to rely on Caecilius. The Ancient One possessed enormous magical power, and even he felt a little apprehensive. On the road to chasing eternity, he hadn't expected that the first thing she couldn't bear was her own body. Her magic power was so immense that her body was the first to be unable to bear it. After all, it was just a carbon-based life form, and living for more than 500 years was already the limit. No matter how the cells divided or how stimulated they were by magic, they had reached their limit. It was impossible to split forever and keep the body active. Her body was dying. And now, would she still have the idea of abandoning her body after having the ruby crystal? Before entering the portal, Duke suddenly turned his head and asked, "By the way, Mr. Ancient One, how many magic words have you deciphered?" Then, to the Ancient One's astonishment, he smiled, jumped into the portal, and disappeared. So that's how it is. End of this chapter. Chapter 70, Old Steve. A small car was making its way to the Air Force Base. Samir kept glancing in the rearview mirror, and finally he couldn't help but ask, "Boss, are we really going to see him?" Samir felt a bit melancholic. He could only call Duke boss, while others like Leon could call him master. Samir always felt that Duke didn't care much for him. Duke's response was always the same. "How old are you?" Samir fell silent. It felt awkward for a 40-year-old to call a 20-year-old teacher. "Why? Are you afraid of seeing your old friend?" Duke asked with a playful smile. "Considering his age, that guy should be a middle-aged man in his 50s by now, right?" "No, I'm afraid of irritating him," Samir replied with a wry smile. 23 years ago he was 23 and Steve was 40. Now he's still 30 and Steve is in his 60s. Then don't go up. "Ahem, that's what I meant." Samir smiled and continued driving. It wasn't anything exciting. In fact, during the 21 years Duke had been asleep, he had seen Steve several times. He was keenly aware that this might be a farewell. How could they not meet him? The car stopped at the base gate. After showing their identification, the guard let them through. "Please come in. Colonel Trevor is waiting for you on the 5th floor." "Colonel? Before I fell asleep, he was just a captain, right?" Duke remarked. "You remember very well, boss," Samir nodded. After the car stopped, the three of them got into the elevator. Inside, Diana expressed her confusion. "The Steve Rogers you mentioned, is he really that good?" "Let's put it this way. He's going to be a symbol for America and a core for the future," Duke said. He had a glimpse of the future, Captain America, during a magical dream trip. "New and Old Steve, I'm looking forward to meeting these two people," Duke smiled. Old Steve could be considered the captain during World War I. Neither had a military status, and then Duke remembered Steve Trevor, so he came to him for help, and Steve helped him get into the Strategic Science Reserve Team with a fake identity. It hasn't changed, has it? "Oh no, I don't think you'd want to see him." "Is it?" Duke could tell that Diana must have seen Steve while he was asleep, but he didn't ask. He trusted Diana. You could tell from the first sight when you wake up, and besides, a cheater can't write that kind of diary. If he guessed correctly, it should be the old man Steve who came to find Diana. As for reminiscing about the past, he no longer had any interest. After all, he was already an old man. Today Steve Trevor had retired from the Air Force. He was too old to fly a plane due to physical reasons, but he became the commander of a base in the Air Force with the rank of colonel. "Long time no see, everyone." A man who had obviously dressed up and decorated himself walked over, stretching out his hands enthusiastically. Then, the next second, Duke burst out laughing. Diana gave him a reproachful look, and Samir was also a bit stunned. "You're lying. You weren't like this 5 years ago." "Brother, what's wrong with you?" Seeing him for the first time, Duke laughed. Steve had obviously tidied up for this long-lost meeting, but it was useless on a 200-pound fat man. "I'm sorry. Ha ha ha. Sorry, ha ha. Sorry, I can't control myself. Let me laugh for a while." Duke ran to the corner, laughing uncontrollably. That's what Diana meant when she said, "I don't think you'd want to see him." Steve, with a wry smile, retracted his hand and greeted Duke, who was already laughing and twitching in the corner. Sit, don't just stand there." "I said, brother, what's the matter with you?" After sitting down, Samir asked in confusion, could it be that sitting in the office turned him into a fat man? The last time I saw him 5 years ago, he wasn't like this. Diana noticed that Steve's face had become a little fuller. No wonder she hadn't seen him in the past 5 years. Perhaps he was afraid of being laughed at. Diana remained silent. Although she hadn't seen Steve in years, she had her suspicions. During the years Duke was asleep, Diana went to college and studied medicine. From the last time she saw Steve 5 years ago, she could tell he suffered from secondary obesity, a condition caused by disease. This type of obesity is very difficult to treat. Simply relying on exercise can only address the symptoms, not the root cause. As for the cause of the disease, it was hard for her to determine without a thorough examination. However, she suspected it might be related to the hypothalamus or the adrenal cortex. Once afflicted with this condition, treatment becomes very challenging, especially with the current medical advancements. So even though she hadn't seen him for 5 years, Diana had already imagined Steve's current appearance in her mind. And it turned out she was right. Forget it. It's all in the past. "But you, Samir, you haven't changed a bit," Steve said with a sigh. "Heh," Samir chuckled, shrugging his shoulders. What could he say? He didn't want to provoke Steve further. The boss was still laughing. Was it really that funny? After laughing for 5 minutes, Duke finally stopped and walked back slowly. "I'm really sorry. I almost didn't recognize you." "Poof. No, I can't see your face." Just looking at Steve made him want to laugh. The change was too drastic. He suddenly understood how Uncle Wolf felt when he saw Frederick Dukes again after a long time. Who was this fat person? "Steve, at your age, most people have the charm of a middle-aged uncle, but you look like an old lady." Duke finally managed to control his laughter. Steve spread his hands, indicating he didn't want to talk about it. "Well, we're here to ask you for a favor. We need you to send us to the Strategic Science Reserve," Duke said. "Strategic Science Reserve?" Steve shook his chubby chin. "I think I've heard that name somewhere." "Oh, yes, Colonel Phillips mentioned it at a reception." "Colonel Phillips? Chester Phillips?" Duke asked. "You know him?" "Yes. I'm afraid I can't help you. It's a top-secret unit. I only know Colonel Phillips by face. I can't get you in." Steve shook his head. He was just a colonel, not a general. "Forget it, nice to meet you," Duke said, standing up and patting Steve on the shoulder. "Dude, lose some weight." Steve's face darkened. Unable to connect with the Strategic Science Reserve through Steve, Duke didn't mind. It was a farewell to his former partner. The old and new Steve's story ends here. End of this chapter. Chapter 71. The Goddess of Chinese Manga? At the end of an alley in Brooklyn. "I could spend the whole day with you. Is that him? Ah, I guess he's about to be beaten to the ground again." On the roof of a building overlooking the alley, 2 figures observed the scene below. Sure enough, the skinny guy was punched hard in the face by a big, tall guy. The force of the punch sent the skinny man flying, his head colliding with an aluminum trash can, leaving a deep dent. He lay motionless, like a puddle of mud. "Look, I told you," Diana frowned. "Are his teeth okay?" "They should be," Duke replied. He didn't recall the Captain America version of Steve missing any teeth. Maybe they grew back when his pectoral muscles got bigger? Or perhaps the big guy was just ineffective, unable to knock out Captain America's teeth despite numerous punches. Either the guy was weak, or Captain America's teeth were exceptionally strong. Maybe he could endorse toothpaste. Suddenly, Bucky appeared and sent the big guy flying with a kick. Where did he come from? Diana was curious. God knows, but he didn't just appear out of thin air. Duke shrugged, equally curious. In the movie, Bucky didn't walk from one end of the alley to the other. He seemed to appear out of nowhere, covering a distance of 30 meters in a second. He probably came out of a small door nearby during the fight. This guy is too weak, even weaker than Charlie. Are you sure you got it right? Diana was puzzled. Back then, Charlie took several heavy punches before going down, but this guy fell with just one punch. So weak. It should be, right? Duke smiled mysteriously. Okay, there's nothing more to see. Let's go. We'll rest and head to the Tomorrow Expo tomorrow night. Oh. Diana nodded as Duke opened a portal, and they returned to Karazhan. Howard looked for you a few days ago. Why didn't you see him? Diana asked. No hurry, it's not the time yet. When? Tomorrow, Duke replied with a mysterious smile. Diana rolled her eyes. I find that you're becoming more and more mysterious. It would be boring to reveal the answer in advance, Duke said. He wanted to see if there was a Captain America. Although Steve Trevor failed to help them enter the Strategic Science Reserve Team, he found James Barnes, who then led Duke to Steve Rogers, the future Captain America. Sure enough, the day before the Tomorrow's World Expo, they witnessed Captain America getting beaten up. It seemed the U.S. team still existed. In the alley, the future Captain America, Steve Rogers, finally woke up. He was a little dizzy from the heavy punch, and his mind was a bit foggy. Sometimes I think you just like being beaten. How many times? Oh, this time it's from Paramus. You know it's against the law to fake a draft, and there's New Jersey. Bucky shook his head, exasperated. Have you received the order? Steve asked, envious of his friend in a military uniform. 107th Infantry, Sergeant James Barnes, set sail for England tomorrow morning. I should go too. Come on, buddy, it's the last night before I join the army. I'll help you change your outfit, Bucky said with a smile, putting his arm around Steve's shoulders. Why? Where are we going? To the future, Bucky replied, holding up a newspaper. Tomorrow's World Expo. Meanwhile, in Karazhan, Duke was busy transforming Wicca, completing the last step of her body shaping. The little elf Wicca was essentially a soul body, summoned by pure water elements, making her body transparent. When summoned, she appeared as a round ball. For her, appearance itself was, under Duke's intervention, she began to grow in the direction of Yuji. It was time to reap the fruits of his labor. In the studio, Diana stared in disbelief. You are too shameless, aren't you? She exclaimed. Wife, why should you call it shameless? This is art, Duke replied, stretching out his hand to perfect the shape. Diana rubbed her forehead, exasperated. Forget it, just treat it as carving. Despite her words, she was puzzled. Taking advantage of Duke's distraction, she glanced at her own chest. Could it be that Duke prefers larger ones? Even though hers weren't very big, they weren't small either. Maybe she should start drinking a glass of papaya juice every day? Leanne had also been in the studio initially, but Duke had kicked her out once he started working. Children shouldn't watch, even if she was 27 years old. Her soul and body had reverted to a 12-year-old's appearance, and Duke still subconsciously regarded her as the young Leon from his disciple period. He elongated the neck, adjusted the lip line, made the ears slightly pointed, thinned the arms, lengthened the fingers, and extended the legs. The hips needed more work, so he patted and shaped them. After a while, Wicca's final version was finally settled. Finally, he infused the mana ruby. To shape Wicca's body, a mana ruby was sufficient. She couldn't afford a ruby crystal. With the infusion of vitality, Wicca's body solidified little by little, gradually losing its water-blue transparency. Bit by bit, she transformed into a human. Her skin became like curdled fat, her long, flowing hair turned ink black, and her eyes, once devoid of light, darkened. Her lips turned red, and her eyebrows became like willows. Diana watched in awe, feeling a twinge of jealousy. Wasn't this girl too pretty? Nirvana's 9-fold flame hairpin, with a smile as light as clouds. Meiji is as picturesque as a fairy. Her face is charming and youthful. The light silk flicks the autumn waves slightly, and the slender fingers startle the willow eyebrows. The hunting wind blows and caresses the blue hair, and the dancing sleeve dancer laughs at the maid. It is as bright as the moon covered by light clouds, and it flutters like the flowing snow of the wind. Cold as ice, gorgeous as peaches and plums, overwhelming country and city, unparalleled in the world. Diana's head was filled with black lines. Why are you reciting poetry? Is this your former lover? What? Duke was stunned, confused by her question. Then he understood. How is it possible? If I were an ordinary person and had such a beautiful girlfriend, I would have died a long time ago. Not that Mi Qing died, but he would have been beaten to death. This is the self-proclaimed goddess of Chinese manga by nerds. What is an otaku? Diana asked. It's people who stay at home and don't want to move. And what is guomon? Cartoon. Oh. Diana nodded, understanding. In her time, there were color cartoons, so she grasped the concept. A character in the animation, what's her name? She inquired. Flame Lingji. Oh, Duke had considered various characters. Angel Yan, Yan Lingji, Juju King, Xiao Ximing, Yunyun, Liang Bing, Chang Wei, Nong Yu, Tu Shanyaya, Sujuer, Yuaji, and more. In the end, he chose Yan Lingji. As the chief steward of Karazhan, Wicca held great significance. After much thought, Duke decided to shape Wicca into a familiar look, leaving a trace of hometown taste. End of this chapter. Chapter 72. That's right, a computer is an electrified brain. Boss, this is the ticket for the World Expo tomorrow. Cough cuff. Who are you? Samir opened the door and entered. When he saw the new version of Wicca, he was stunned. He felt deeply attracted and simultaneously overwhelmed by an intense sense of inferiority. Nima, he couldn't dare to look directly. The chic Chinese-style long black hair added an enchanting touch. Her quiet blue eyes in the darkness gave him a deep and psychedelic feeling, making him subconsciously avoid eye contact. Yan Lingji's clothes were blue dance attire, reminiscent of Han Fei's when she danced, not the black and red battle clothes. He remembered the specific appearance of the dance clothes clearly, and the general style was correct. However, the shoes were not the crystal mid-heel dancing shoes, but white boots. Looking at her like this, she exuded a bit of a chivalrous woman aura. Of course, she also had a black and red battlesuit. The mana ruby contained powerful vitality, but it was the condensed magic power of the red dragon, and the red dragon's magic nature was flame. She was a water elemental elf. After injecting the mana ruby, she gained the ability to control fire. Previously, she only had water. Now she was both tender and passionate. Splash! A huge water ball fell from the sky and hit Samir's head, soaking him completely. He was suddenly shocked. Ah, you are. Are you Wicca? He finally reacted. Now she is called Yan Lingji. Ah, oh. Samir was stunned for a moment. Although he knew Chinese, he didn't quite understand the meaning of these three words. Give it to me, Duke said, reaching for the ticket. Although Duke tried his best, he couldn't adjust the voice line. Why? To be precise, although she looked no different from a human on the outside, she still had something different on the inside. There were no bones, viscera, or blood vessels inside her body, let alone vocal cords. You could understand that she looked like she was waiting for her skills to come alive. The shape could be adjusted and shaped, but the sound could not be modified. Fortunately, pure elemental spirits possessed the ability of mimetic simulation, not only changing their appearance, but also imitating their voices. After numerous pointers from Duke, they finally simulated a similarity of more than 90%. At least it sounded like Yan Lingji's voice, not someone else's. Oh, that? Then I'll go out first. Samir chose to escape in a panic. Duke looked a little amused and joked, Could it be that you've fallen in love with her? Ahem, how could it be? Boss, stop joking. Samir was embarrassed for a moment and almost stumbled. It's fine if you don't have this idea, Duke snorted coldly. Although her appearance has changed, her body has not. She cannot have children. Even if you want to find a celebrity to marry, I won't stop you. But Yan Lingji, you can save yourself that worry. Even though that was the case, Samir still heard a sense of warning and secretly scolded himself. How stupid. This must be the boss's woman. Ahem. Boss, are you kidding me? How can I get married like this? I'm already satisfied with a few lovers. I'll go out first. Then he turned and went down the stairs. Samir had already set foot in the field of magic, and his lifespan was destined to be greatly extended in the future, coupled with the existence of Karazhan. As long as Karazhan did not fall, he would never die. Marry? This was a distant thought. Although there was a magic mask, he could grow old with his wife, but it was not truly aging after all. It didn't matter if his wife died. He could remove the magic mask, but what about his children? In New York, he met his young father again? Do you want to say that you have the wrong person? Some children can't recognize it. There are women who cannot kiss. How painful is this? Once he chose to step into this world, he had to bear the consequences. Samir had already mentally prepared himself for the mysterious field he was about to enter. Finding a wife to accompany him was no easy task. It required someone with the same magical aptitude and the approval of the boss to grant magic. However, he knew the boss wouldn't agree so easily, and he wouldn't dare ask Duke either. Thus, he never considered finding a wife to accompany him for life. Instead, he had several lovers, including starlets. After all, he was rich, humorous, and full of mystery, which made him extremely attractive to young women. If he wanted to divert his energy, he could easily find a few lovers. If he wanted to continue his family line, there were plenty of women willing to bear his children. In the United States, as long as you had money, there was little you couldn't buy. In Hell's Kitchen, or rather, Heaven's Kitchen, if you didn't have many lovers around, it was considered too cheap. In fact, Samir didn't realize that if he ever found a wife and asked for magic, she would no longer be his wife, but would become Duke's wife. With a loyalty of over 90%, she could do whatever she wanted. How many couples do you think have emotional loyalty reaching 90%? Even 60% is considered good. If it ever reached 90%, Samir would never be allowed on board again. Therefore, it was impossible for Duke to do such a thing. He couldn't have taught Samir's wife magic. This was a matter of morality, and he couldn't lose it. As Samir walked away, Duke watched him in silence. This was indeed a kind of warning. How could Yan Lingji be missed by someone like Samir? However, it was false to say that she couldn't bear children. Elemental elves could conceive children by splitting a small piece of their elemental core. This small piece didn't have the ability to condense into a body of the element and needed to be kept inside until it could come out independently. This was their child. Therefore, for elemental elves, both mothers and fathers could give birth, although the nature was different. However, it was true that she couldn't combine with humans and have offspring. It wasn't as simple as cross-species. Master, do you really like this sister? Lian floated out of nowhere, like a ghost. Well, she was a ghost. Why do you call her sister? Duke was puzzled. She's made of water elements. As for elements, who knows how many years they have existed in this world? Lian said, taking it for granted. Well, she had a point. Hey, Master, you haven't told me yet. Told you what? Do you like this sister? Nonsense, I don't know how many people like her. In 73 years you may see her on the computer, Duke said. What is a computer? An electrified brain? Lian was curious. What kind of imagination is this? An electrified brain. A computer is... That's right, a computer is an electrified brain, Duke responded, waving his hand and throwing Lian out of the room. Master Smelly. Go and rest first, Homura. Okay. Elemental elves didn't have the complex emotions of humans. They only had basic emotions like joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. Their emotions were relatively simple. Pack it up. It's time for the expo. End of this chapter. Chapter 73. Uncle Duke. Anti-gravity technology? He really came up with something impressive. Duke and Diana stood amidst the crowd, sipping milk tea leisurely. Do you think he can make it work? Diana asked. What do you think? Duke responded with a question. It will definitely fail. Ah? Why are you so sure? Duke was puzzled. He had hoped for a breakthrough. Didn't he just say it would take a few more years? Is that so? Sure enough, the special red car fell to the ground with a boom, electric sparks flying. I said it would take a few more years, right? Howard Stark smiled self-deprecatingly. It might not be just a few years, but a long, long time. Duke couldn't remember clearly who eventually drove such a magnetic levitation car. Tony? It didn't seem like it. Ah, yes, he remembered. Phil Coulson's girlfriend Laura in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had an antique car that could fly. Could it be this one? Come on, we should go see him. Ah, the two walked towards the exhibition hall. By the way, wife, didn't you drink a glass of papaya juice today? Duke teased. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. You must have seen it wrong. Diana reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, bristling with indignation. You must have seen it wrong. It was milk, just milk. Duke smiled and said nothing more. She must have been influenced by Yan Lingji. Although he enjoyed the feeling of being in control, the surging sense of excitement was also very appealing. Howard Stark was directing the staff to pack up the broken car. Howard turned his head, stunned. After a moment, he jumped forward in surprise. "Uncle Duke, it's really you." He then gave Duke a big hug. The staff behind him looked at Duke and then at their boss. "Who was this, Uncle? When you woke up, you were already this old? You were only this tall back then." Duke raised his hand, reminiscing. "I had to grow up, but you still look the same as I remember." Howard Stark didn't care about the surprised looks from his men and smiled. "Aunt Diana is still so beautiful." "You too. I heard you've charmed many innocent girls." Although Howard Stark hadn't seen Duke in 21 years, he often saw Diana during holidays like New Year's Day and Christmas. Diana had long been used to this title. "Cough. Cough? Let's not talk about that." Howard Stark coughed a few times in embarrassment. "Those were all absurd things in the past. I'm much better now." "Really? You kissed a girl just now, didn't you?" Duke teased. "It was just etiquette. Cough, cough. Let's change the subject." Howard Stark felt embarrassed and quickly changed the topic. "Let's go inside and sit." The two of them didn't tease him anymore. Duke knew Howard well enough to understand his wit. Talented people often had such quirks. Wasn't his son Tony the same? It must be genetic. "Come on, Uncle Duke. This is your favorite Tiaguanian, orchid fragrance type." Howard ran up and down courteously, bringing the tea himself. "You still have it with you?" Duke was pleasantly surprised. "To be honest, after drinking it for 23 years, I still haven't gotten used to it, but I like the orchid fragrance. Besides, it was recommended by Uncle Duke, so of course, I have to keep it." Howard took a deep sniff and sipped the hot tea. "Your father." Howard Stark glanced at Diana and suddenly understood. "Hey, it's nothing, the old man's own choice." He took out a metal box from his jacket pocket and opened it to reveal a bottle of medicine. "I've been carrying this as the old man told me when he was dying. He said that knowing you in this life was his greatest blessing." He wiped his eyes. "Let's not talk about him. Uncle Duke, did your retreat this time result in a successful advancement?" "Of course." "Congratulations. We must drink 3 cups today." Howard Stark clapped his hands excitedly. He had learned a lot from Duke during their 2 years together. Of course, he felt somewhat uncomfortable in his heart. Uncle Duke had always said that he had good magical aptitude and was suitable for learning magic, but he never taught him. The reason given was that a scientific mind was more suitable for him, and he hoped he would continue on the path of science. Now, he had lived up to those expectations, finally making a name for himself and even surpassing his father. Stark Industries was founded not so long ago, and the Army's business was established during this time, around World War II. Not long ago, before the United States entered the war, it was the best time to make a significant effort to sell military supplies abroad. However, after the United States announced its participation in the war, this kind of trade decreased. After all, we can't openly cheat our own people. Externally, the focus shifted to internal sales, as the military alone could not produce enough ammunition and materials. "Okay, let's talk about this later," Howard said. "Uncle Duke, did you come to see me for something specific?" "Yes, I want to join the Strategic Science Reserve," Duke replied. "The Strategic Science Reserve? How did you know about that?" Howard Stark was a little curious. He had accepted the invitation the year before last. "I'll explain when the time comes. Can you help me get in?" Duke asked. The Strategic Scientific Reserve, SSR, was established during World War II. It was directly under the U.S. government, adopting a militarized organization and presiding over several secret projects, including the Super Soldier Project. Shortly after the end of World War II, the Strategic Science Reserve was reorganized and became the Science and Technology Division of SILD. In 1940, when World War II was in full swing in Europe, then-President Franklin D. Roosevelt realized that the United States' participation in the war was inevitable. He signed an order to form a Strategic Scientific Reserve team to provide the United States with military technology and intelligence support. The first commander of the Strategic Science Reserve was Colonel Chester Phillips. Colonel Phillips then asked industrial tycoon Howard Stark to join, and after some consideration, Stark quickly agreed. "It's not a big problem. Can you reveal your identities to Colonel Phillips? If you can, it will make things easier," Howard Stark whispered. To put it simply, the current Strategic Science Reserve was just a scientific research institution not as confidential and strict as the later S.H. Shield, but not everyone could enter casually. Diana glanced at Duke, who nodded. It doesn't matter, he said. Their identities couldn't be completely hidden in the first place. A tower as big as Karazhan, appearing and disappearing, had already become a miracle in New York. Moreover, Duke was not the type to do good deeds without leaving a name. Then I have no problem. Just one question, Uncle Duke. In what capacity do you want to join? External instructor. External instructor? Okay, Howard agreed. End of this chapter. Chapter 74, Feeling Like a Monkey. Don't do anything stupid. Wait for me to come back, Bucky said. How could I? You took all the stupidity with you, Captain America replied with a smile. You bastard. You're an asshole. The two briefly hugged and then separated. Be careful, you won't win the war until I get there, said Captain America. Bucky made a gesture of respect and went off to dance with the girls. Watching his partner leave, Steve looked a little depressed. He glanced at the photo of a soldier behind him, then turned and left. Behind him, Dr. Abraham Erskine was peeping furtively. Just as Steve turned around, a cigar appeared in front of his eyes. Fortunately, he stopped quickly, otherwise he would have hit his nose. He stepped back a little. Smoking? Special cigars, not cigarettes. They are not harmful to the human body, a voice said. Steve didn't take the cigar but continued to step back and asked cautiously, Who are you? Duke. Are you the Duke? Captain America asked, attempting a joke. I'm stronger than the Duke. Why don't you try it? It tastes good, Duke continued to gesture. Steve hesitated for a moment but still took it. My name is Steve Rogers. The next moment, the cigar was lit, which almost made Captain America's eyes pop out. What? What happened? Automatic? He smoked it cautiously. The entrance was cool, with a hint of mint, but it was not as strong as mint. It was very mild, and after a puff of smoke, he felt that his lungs were clean. I didn't lie to you, did I? The fire just now. A magic trick. Don't make a fuss about it. Steve, I know you. Duke puffed out a smoke ring. I also have a friend named Steve Trevor, an Air Force colonel. You know me? Wait, Colonel, can you let me join the army? Steve's eyes lit up. You want to be in the Air Force? Duke looked surprised. As long as I can join the army, I can be any soldier. Although, I still want to go to the 107th Infantry Regiment, Steve said, his voice lowering. He knew that the possibility of being in the Air Force was basically zero, and the infantry might still have hope. The pilot's review regulations, as well as the physical and mental requirements, are 10,000 times more difficult than infantry. It is also impossible to enter through connections. I'm curious, why do you insist on being a soldier? Duke asked. He had always been curious about why Steve Rogers was so obsessed with joining the military. His mother was a nurse in the tuberculosis ward and got infected. His father was in the 107th Infantry and died of mustard gas during World War I. Looking at him, it seemed he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, but he didn't want to kill people or be a bully. P.S. This is what I said when I communicated with Dr. Abraham Erskine. Then why did you join the army? To play house? Or do you see yourself as military Dr. Desmond Dawes 3 years from now? They are faithful to their beliefs, resolutely refuse to take up arms on the battlefield, and are unwilling to shoot anyone on the front line. He went into battle alone, with a medical kit on his back, not afraid of the hail of bullets and the brutal Japanese army, and kept praying, begging to save another person with his meager strength. Until he was exhausted, 75 wounded comrades were miraculously transported to a safe place by him and survived. Do you think you are a legendary military doctor, still unwilling to kill? If you don't want to kill people, what kind of soldier and what kind of army do you join? Do you think that you were born to become the Captain America of Wei Guangzheng? Why Captain America joined the army when he was young is simply a mystery. Steve Rogers froze for a moment, then became vigilant again. Who the hell are you? Why do you ask that? Are you a conscription officer? Duke smiled and took a puff of smoke. It can be understood in this way. If your answer is satisfactory, I can give you a chance. Really? Steve Rogers' eyes lit up. My time is precious, Duke said, implying that Steve should hurry up with his answer. No time to joke with you. I don't know. Maybe I want to prove myself? Steve Rogers pondered for a moment before responding. Of course. There's also the influence of my father. Is it really that simple? Duke mused. Perhaps this is indeed why Steve joined the army. After all, he had been bullied since childhood for being thin and weak. Men bullied him, women looked down on him, and long-term depression without psychological darkness is quite remarkable. However, the current Steve Rogers still harbors some low self-esteem. His greatest virtue is his willingness to admit his own shortcomings, as he did when he spoke candidly with Peggy Carter. His heart is relatively pure. During the conscription review, Steve expressed his desire to join his father's 107th Infantry Regiment. Presumably, his father's influence played a significant role. In this era, there weren't many ways to prove oneself. The easiest and most direct method was to join the army. When he first became Captain America, he traveled around canvassing votes, selling bonds, and soliciting sponsorships. Initially, he enjoyed this job. After all, he was there to prove his usefulness, not to fight on the front lines. As long as he could demonstrate his value in other areas, he was content. It was only later that he grew tired of it, feeling like a performing monkey. When he heard that his friend was in trouble, he resolutely stepped onto the battlefield. "Your father?" Duke asked. "107th Infantry Regiment died of mustard gas? A battle?" Although Duke had stopped General Ludendorff, the mustard gas had already been unleashed on the front lines. Was Captain America's father so unlucky? It just so happened that he died in one of the few frontline positions where the mustard gas was released and no one survived. It was simply bad luck. "Yes," Steve confirmed. "Go to the conscription office inside. Your wish will come true." Duke finished smoking his cigar, tossed the butt into the trash can, and turned to leave. "Go inside. Hey, who are you?" Steve Rogers was a bit confused. Was that it? Turning around, he saw that the man had already left, so he quickly called out. Duke waved his hand without looking back. "We will meet again." Steve Rogers stood there, puzzled. So mysterious. After a moment's thought, he discarded the cigar and walked towards the conscription office, deciding to give it a try. Dr. Abraham Erskine had been observing Steve Rogers for a long time. Although he disappeared after seeing Duke come out, influencing a person's subconscious mind isn't difficult. Soon after entering, Steve met Dr. Erskine. After a few routine questions, Steve finally got his wish and became a 1A first-class soldier, a recruit of the Caspian Battalion. Diana was waiting outside. When she saw Duke coming out, she immediately stepped forward and asked, "How is it? What do you think of him?" "Probably still the Steve Rogers I saw," Duke replied with a smile. "Probably again?" Diana questioned. Duke shrugged. "At least for now." He couldn't pretend to be completely prophetic. End of this chapter. Chapter 75. The Doctor Must Die, Caspian Battalion. "Mr. Stark, this is no joke," Colonel Chester Phillips said angrily. "I'm not kidding," Howard Stark replied with a shrug. "You know how much work we've put into this project, and I've had to grovel to those god-awful committees." Colonel Chester Phillips looked at Howard with disdain. "And now, you actually want me to bring in two so-called special external instructors whose names I don't even know? I believe that Agent Peggy Carter is qualified for the position of instructor." "Of course she is. She's heroic, the type I like, but," Howard said as he took out a photo and handed it over. "What is this?" Colonel Chester Phillips asked, a bit taken aback. The photo was quite old. It was the same photo Robert Stark had received, and when the old man died, Howard kept it with him. "The town of Feld, photographed in November 1919, about a week before the end of the First World War," Howard explained. Colonel Chester Phillips was stunned. "The town of Feld, that name sounds familiar. Ah, now I remember. It was one of the few places where German troops were still resisting at the end, right?" "Yes. Behind it was the German High Command and a German combat base," Howard continued. "I know this too. I sent someone to look at it later. The High Command was quite miserable and was poisoned to death by mustard gas. It is said that the Kaiser was also there at that time. If the rabbit hadn't left early, As for the base, it seems there was an earthquake, and most of the German soldiers were killed by sharp swords," Colonel Chester Phillips said. Colonel Chester Phillips didn't know some of the secrets. He was only a major at that time. Although he participated in the First World War, the news he knew was very limited. Besides the wounds from the sharp sword, There were also traces of claws and fangs, which were covered up. The earthquake-like scene was characterized as intensive bomb explosions. After all, the effect was very similar. It was flames, thunder, and lightning that lifted the ground. Isn't that very similar to the explosion of dynamite, but on a larger scale? Don't tell me that the battle was fought by the 9 people in this photo, Colonel Chester Phillips said, looking disbelieving. In the photo, Diana stood in the center, flanked by Duke, Doubtson Carlos, Logan, and Victor on the left, and Steve, Samir, Charlie, and the Chief on the right. A combat base must have at least nearly 1,000 people, and at least a few hundred would always be there. 9 people beating hundreds? Are you Rambo? Wait, who is Rambo, and why do I know the name? Well, forget it. I don't want to say it, but it is, Howard shrugged. Those sharp sword wounds were done by these 2 people, right? Colonel Chester Phillips pointed to the 2 women in the photo. Only they carried swords. Maybe, Howard replied. What happened back then, except for the people in the small town of Feld, outsiders didn't know at all. Who are the 2 special external instructors you mentioned? These 2? Colonel Chester Phillips pointed to Diana and Steve. No, it's the man on the other side, Howard corrected. Him? Colonel Chester Phillips frowned again. A yellow-skinned Oriental? He had no ill feelings toward yellow-skinned people, but he didn't have much affection either. If he had to choose, he would definitely choose the one next to him. Okay, let them try it. Do they need to be included in the file? Colonel Chester Phillips asked. Howard thought for a while, then shook his head. No need, but documents are needed. Can do, Colonel Chester Phillips agreed. What was Duke doing at this time? He had already settled in Camp Caspian and was chatting with Dr. Abraham Erskine on the sidelines of the training ground. Have you ever thought about what will happen after this project is successful? Duke asked. After that, I haven't thought about it. Dr. Abraham Erskine shook his head. He was very wary of this. Duke, familiar with the Oriental customs, subtly too. Okay, a step back. And you are? Duke, the new external instructor, Duke replied, extending his hand. Oh, hello, Abraham Erskine, the doctor responded, shaking Duke's hand despite his lingering suspicion. It was unusual to see a yellow-skinned instructor in the U.S. Army, as it typically happened the other way around. The fact that Duke knew about this classified project was even more peculiar. Let's continue our previous discussion. Have you thought about what happens after success? Duke asked. The doctor smiled. Success? You seem to have a lot of faith in me. I'm not even sure of victory, so how can I think about the future? You might as well consider it, Duke suggested. Actually, there are only 2 possible outcomes for you. One is death, and the other is being on the way to death, Duke continued before Dr. Abraham Erskine could respond. What do you mean? The doctor asked, frowning. When the super soldier serum succeeds, Schmidt's people will definitely not let you go. They will continue to try to assassinate you. If they fail once, they will try again until you are dead. Those people are crazy, and I believe you know that very well. So it's either death or being on the way to death. Do you think I'm right? Duke smiled. The doctor's face turned pale. In other words, even if you survive by chance, you will become a puppet controlled by the U.S. government. You will be forced to produce the super soldier serum, Duke continued. The doctor adjusted his glasses and smiled wryly. It's not that simple to replicate the super soldier serum. It took me several years to perfect the formula. Mass-producing the serum is impossible. Then, here comes the problem. If you can't complete the tasks assigned by the U.S. government, what will they think? They will believe you didn't do your best, that you are being perfunctory, that you don't want to make super soldiers anymore, because you fear too many of them will disrupt the world. Maybe for a short time, they will tolerate it. But in the long run, your end will still be death, Duke laughed. The doctor was sweating. No one wants to die like that. Everyone hopes to die naturally if possible. Who the hell are you? The doctor demanded. Master of Karazhan, Duke replied. Dr. Abraham Erskine's eyes widened in shock. Are you the owner of that tower that disappeared for 21 years? He had studied this supernatural phenomenon, but could never get inside. He could only wander outside, turning in circles, walking straight in, but eventually coming out in a daze, completely unaware of what had happened. It's me. If you don't want to die and don't want to become a puppet slave under the control of the U.S. government, you can come work in my Karazhan. Are you not interested in the research of occultism? Duke said, patting the doctor on the shoulder. Think carefully. Not far away, Colonel Phillips approached. End of this chapter. Chapter 76. Ah, it's you. When Colonel Chester Phillips saw Duke for the first time, he was taken aback. Damn, it's been 23 years, and he hasn't aged a day, he thought. You didn't tell me they look exactly the same as they did 23 years ago, the colonel said, turning to Howard with a hint of irritation. Did I not? Howard replied, feigning innocence. Well, I must have forgotten. The old man rolled his eyes in exasperation, shook his head, and walked over to Duke. Nice to meet you, Mr. Duke. Hello, Colonel Phillips. You look like— Oh, I take good care of myself. Duke interrupted. Howard Stark, standing behind them, nearly choked on his own saliva. Well maintained, really? He thought. Colonel Chester Phillips was equally skeptical. Where is that beautiful lady? He asked. Over there, Duke said, pointing to the distance. Where? The old man's eyesight wasn't what it used to be. He squinted and finally spotted the beautiful lady standing atop the tallest building in the Caspian Sea camp, surveying the area. How did she get up there? Well, it seems our camp will be much livelier from now on, he mused, before turning his attention to the queue of recruits. In the queue, the big, burly soldiers were eyeing the short, thin Steve Rogers with curiosity. It was as if a husky had wandered into a pack of wolves. At that moment, Captain America's girlfriend, Peggy Carter, made her entrance. Recruits, attention, she commanded. The soldiers quickly stood at attention, heads held high, chests out, and stomachs in. Peggy Carter marched in, exuding a heroic aura despite her somewhat square face. Gentlemen, this is Agent Carter, Colonel Phillips announced. For the next period, she will be overseeing everything in this department. In an era that was extremely unfriendly to women, the soldiers were naturally upset about being trained by one. However, they understood the chain of command. Still, there were always a few who didn't know their place. What's with your accent, Queen Victoria? I thought I was serving in the U.S. Army, one soldier sneered. What's your name, soldier? Peggy asked. Gilmer Hodge, Your Majesty. Step forward, Hodge. Shall we fight? I have a move you'll like. Bang! A heavy punch landed squarely on Hodge's face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Agent Carter, Colonel Phillips called out. Colonel Phillips! Peggy quickly straightened her clothes, turned around, and saluted. It seems you've already bonded with our recruits. Not bad, the colonel said, walking to the front of the queue. Get your butt off the ground and return to the line. Did anyone tell you to stop? Yes, sir. Gilmer Hodge quickly stood up. He might have dared to provoke Peggy Carter, but he wouldn't dare defy the veteran colonel. General Patton once said— Colonel Chester Phillips began his lecture. Duke, uninterested, slowly walked over to Carter and winked at her, looking quite frivolous. That punch was good. It was powerful but lacked a bit of technique. If you had used a slight arc, the blow damage would have been more effective, Duke commented. In boxing matches, boxers often throw left hooks, right hooks, and other curved punches, while straight punches are generally used for speed and to disrupt the enemy. Who are you? Peggy Carter asked, giving Duke a sideways glance. She had a very poor impression of this frivolous man. In fact, she felt the same way about anyone who behaved frivolously. Duke, Special External Instructor, Duke introduced himself, extending his hand. Peggy Carter, she replied, shaking his hand briefly. I haven't heard of a new instructor, and a Special External Instructor at that. Oh, I haven't officially notified you yet. Can I invite you for a drink later? Sorry, I still have a job, Peggy Carter replied decisively. Duke didn't mind her refusal. He wasn't genuinely interested in inviting Peggy Carter out. Besides, her square face was far less appealing to him than Diana's. It was merely an attempt to socialize with a celebrity. Ty, it's you, came an exclamation. It was Steve Rogers, the future Captain America. Son, I hate it when people interrupt me. Push-ups, 100, start now. Colonel Chester Phillips yelled. But Steve pointed at Duke, still in shock. What's wrong with me? Have we met? Duke asked with a mysterious smile. 200, Colonel Chester Phillips roared again. Steve Rogers, the future Captain America, lay down on the ground sadly and began doing push-ups. Of course, he couldn't manage 200. Even 20 was a struggle for him. In the end, he managed to stick to 50 before collapsing from exhaustion. Colonel Chester Phillips, seeing Steve struggle, decided not to insist on the full 200 and let him off the hook. "Let me introduce you. This is Duke, your special external instructor. He will be responsible for—" Colonel Chester Phillips paused and turned to Duke, asking, "What exactly are you in charge of?" The soldiers in the queue were momentarily speechless, almost falling over in disbelief. Was the colonel being serious? Did he not know what the special external instructor was supposed to do? Duke, though aware that the colonel was doing this on purpose, was also at a loss for words. "I'm here to develop your fighting skills," he finally said. "Okay, fighting skills. This external instructor is in charge of that." Colonel Chester Phillips clapped his hands and announced, "Wait a minute. I'll be in charge of the rest, and my wife will handle your fighting skills," Duke added, waving to Diana, who was on the roof in the distance. "Honey, you can come down now." Peggy Carter's disdain for Duke grew even stronger. He was married and still trying to provoke her? Then, the leaders of the entire Caspian battalion witnessed a scene that would forever be etched in their memories. Diana made a tremendous leap from the highest point of the barracks, 300 meters away, and landed in front of the queue with a loud boom, cracking the ground beneath her. "Hello, I'm Diana, and I will be in charge of your special combat training for the next period of time," she announced. The soldiers exchanged bewildered glances. Was it too late to back out now? This woman seemed like a superhuman, a supergirl. Colonel Chester Phillips and Dr. Abraham Erskine were equally stunned. Did they even need the super soldier project anymore? Diana alone could probably defeat Adolf. Howard Stark thought to himself, Aunt Diana is still impressive. Peggy Carter wondered, is this woman really Duke's girlfriend? How can he handle her? Why hasn't she broken him in half? Steve Rogers, feeling a mix of awe and embarrassment, thought, is this a goddess? I'm so ashamed. Chapter 77. Training as a Special Cake. The Caspian Sea camp was bustling with activity. Originally, the training was scheduled for 1 week, but with the arrival of Duke and Diana, it was extended to 2 weeks. The first week focused on basic physical fitness and battlefield skills, while the second week was dedicated to Diana's specialized combat training. Colonel Chester Phillips was bewildered as he observed the towering pillars that had suddenly emerged from the ground. Are you trying to train them as special cakes? No, even special cakes don't have this kind of training. Colonel Phillips, I hope you won't interfere with my training methods, Diana said, turning to face him. Of course, that was our agreement, Colonel Phillips nodded. But I'm still a bit concerned. They won't fall and die, will they? I mean, even when I was young, I doubt I could manage this. Dr. Abraham Erskine, standing nearby, was equally astonished, his eyes fixed on Duke. It wasn't admiration but sheer amazement at Duke's ability to create objects out of thin air. He muttered to himself, Mysterious. Magic? What did you say? The colonel asked, turning his head. Oh, nothing, Duke replied with a cryptic smile. Colonel Phillips, don't worry. In my homeland, soldiers must step on pillars 10 times higher than these and cover a minimum distance of 10 meters within 100 seconds to be considered qualified, Diana explained calmly, pointing at the stone pillars. What? Colonel Phillips was flabbergasted. These stone pillars were at least 2 meters high. 10 times that would be at least 20 meters. Navigating such a pillar array and covering a minimum distance of 10 meters in 100 seconds seemed impossible. Then he remembered, she wasn't exactly human. When I was 8 years old, I became a warrior through this, Diana continued, pointing to a nearby stone pillar. And that was probably my toy when I was 3. Toys from when you were 3? Colonel Phillips's mouth twitched. This was the strength of the Amazonian warriors. To them, these 2-meter-high, half-meter-diameter stone pillars were child's play. They trained with giant stone pillars nearly 30 meters high and less than half a meter in diameter, spaced much farther apart. They also ran at high speed on the uneven, slippery reefs that surfaced when the tide ebbed. Falling there could mean serious injury or worse. The stone pillars Duke created for the American soldiers were only 1 meter apart. Jumping from one to another was challenging, but not impossible. Falling from the 2-meter-high pillars wouldn't be fatal, but it would certainly hurt. There was still a risk of serious injury or even death if someone fell and hit their chin or the back of their head on a pillar. This was what made Colonel Phillips nervous. Although the soldiers had signed a casualty agreement upon entering the camp, and the training camp did have a certain number of fatalities, he was still anxious. Any serious incident could lead to military court proceedings. The soldiers stood on the platform in front of the stone pillar array, looking at each other nervously. None of them dared to step forward. This was unlike any training they had ever seen. "Why is no one brave enough to go up? I thought you were all ready, but it seems you're just a bunch of cowards," Diana sneered. "I protest," one soldier shouted. "This is going to kill people," another added. I want to quit." A third soldier stammered. Colonel Phillips, now furious, pointed to the distance. "If you want to quit, get out of here. Quickly, before I change my mind." Again, although he was also very worried about whether he would die if he went up, he thought, if you don't even dare to stand up, what kind of soldier are you? Such a person would be a deserter on the battlefield, and he was directly kicked out of the super soldier plan. The one who called out left with his head down. "Chicken, step aside. Let me show you a demonstration." Diana jumped onto the stone pillar, then tiptoed, moving as swiftly as if she were walking on flat ground. Before the group of soldiers could react, she was already standing on the opposite side. "Is it difficult?" she asked. The soldiers didn't say anything, but they thought to themselves, "Of course, it's not difficult for you." Duke also walked up to the stone pillar with a smile. "Let me demonstrate as well." Saying this, he flashed, swift as the wind, like a phantom. He was on the opposite side in an instant. Diana was speechless. The rest of the soldiers were stunned. "What? I guess you must think that I'm cheating, right? Actually, there's no problem. My requirement is that you pass the 1-meter stone pillar within 100 minutes. As for how you get there, I didn't particularly emphasize that. Even if you crawl over, it's okay," Duke said. Then he glanced at Cap. "Steve Rogers." Captain America was stunned for a moment, then stood up. "Here," he responded. After all, this man was his instructor now. "You come and set an example for them." "Ah, me?" Captain America was taken aback. "Why, didn't you say you want to prove yourself? Don't you even dare to climb a stone pillar?" "No, I just—" Steve Rogers gritted his teeth. He wasn't ready yet. How to say? This kind of training was completely different from the regular training methods in the military camp. For the first time, his mind was in a daze. Although it seemed that the distance between the pillars was not far, only 1 meter, the diameter of the pillar was also fully half a meter wide. Usually, 5 people could squeeze onto it when standing, but running on it, half a meter didn't seem enough. A lack of concentration, a missed step, a lapse in body coordination, and you could fall off the pillar. At this moment, the distance between the pillars had become a life-threatening challenge, because once you fell, you must not fall straight, but backward. In this way, either the back of the head or the spine would hit the stone pillar, which was truly life-threatening. "It seems that your motivation is not enough?" Duke smirked and glanced at Peggy Carter not far away. "If anyone can reach the finish line within 1 minute, they can have a candlelight dinner with Agent Carter." When the soldiers heard this, they whistled immediately, feeling their spirits lift. Peggy Carter suddenly became anxious. "Hey, when did I? Ahem." Colonel Chester Phillips laughed and joked. "If I were 10 years younger, I would also like to go up and try." Peggy Carter was speechless. Colonel Phillips, "Okay, just kidding, but I'll pay for it." Colonel Chester Phillips smiled, then pointed at the soldiers and scolded, "Children, it's not a virtue to keep a lady waiting." End of this chapter. Chapter 78, Let Her Sing Conquest. "Hey boy, don't you want to embrace a beauty?" Duke's voice echoed in Steve Rogers' mind through a secret soul dialogue. "Who?" Captain America suddenly trembled, turning his head to look around. "What the hell, are you sick? If you don't want to go up, get out of here quickly and let me go up," someone pushed hard from behind. It was Gilmer Hodge, the man who had been punched by Agent Carter. He was a villain, eager to see the reaction of the tall woman with the stern face when he snatched the candlelight dinner. He imagined it would be exciting. Of course, it would be even better if she could go up and sing Conquer. "Don't worry, I'm the one talking to you." How about it, boy? I can tell that Agent Carter is interested in you, Duke continued. Of course, if you don't want to, I'll change someone else. Who is that, Hodge? Wait, who said I won't go? Steve Rogers became anxious, opened his arms to block, and subconsciously glanced at Peggy Carter. She responded with a straightforward, disdainful look. Was this what Duke meant by good impression? Steve Rogers felt very depressed. To be honest, he liked Diana. Her amazing appearance on that day had directly conquered him. However, he was self-aware. Compared to Duke, he felt like a monkey, so he could only push this budding feeling out of his mind. They were not in the same world. Besides Diana, the only other woman in the military camp who gave him a different feeling was Agent Carter. Carter was also very attractive to him. In an era where most women worked as secretaries or in logistical roles, it was rare and unusual for someone like Carter to become an agent. She was as rare as a giant panda. Duke didn't expect that his intrusion would almost make him a rival in love. But it didn't matter. Diana was so beautiful, had such a good figure, and possessed a noble, unique, and mysterious temperament. It would be strange if no man liked her. Old Steve was still single, and Duke always felt there must be some reason for this. Let me try, Steve Rogers said, jumping onto the stage and heading towards the finish line. If you don't try, you won't know. Try it and be shocked. The stone pillar array looked easy, but in reality it was difficult, although the gap between the pillars was only 1 meter, making it possible to pass with one step. The key problem was that these stone pillars were arranged irregularly, not in straight rows, and without any order. Steve Rogers realized this when he took his first steps. His eyes were not enough, and his body coordination was off. His left leg often stumbled over his right foot. His upper body twisted to the left, but his lower body turned to the right. Adding the blind spots in his vision, it seemed that there were only 66 stone pillars leading to the finish line, but it took him 1 minute to jump to the 20th pillar. Just as he was moving towards the 21st pillar, his right leg tripped over his left leg. Plop, he fell headfirst. Everyone present was shocked. "Watch out!" Peggy Carter yelled. Colonel Chester Phillips' heart was in his throat. Dr. Abraham Erskine's mouth was wide open. Could it be that the person he selected was about to be gone? In the doctor's eyes, Captain America was equivalent to a beautiful woman. However, Steve hit a pillar with his head and then fell to the ground in a big horse lying position. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt. "Boy, don't say it," Duke's voice echoed again. Captain America was a little confused, thinking he was going to die just now. His body coordination was completely lost, and he couldn't adjust his body in midair. He could only watch helplessly as his head hit the stone pillar. He thought his head must have been bleeding, but it felt like hitting rubber. After falling to the ground, I felt as if I were being lifted up by water. Upon hearing Duke's words, I understood. This was a test for everyone. Peggy Carter quickly ran up and helped Captain America to his feet. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes showing a hint of concern. Captain America, slightly dazed, wondered if what the instructor had said could be true. After being stared at for a long time, Peggy Carter grew a little annoyed. "Are you out of your mind?" she snapped. No, Captain America replied, scratching his head. "It still hurts, but it's not as painful as I imagined. I can bear it." He shook off Agent Carter's hand and walked back to the starting point, his face flushed with embarrassment. "You," Peggy began, but was interrupted. "Sneaky. Those in line, hurry up. What the hell, you don't want to go up, do you?" Duke shouted, casting his magic. Small fireballs hit the starting point with a series of boom, 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 boom sounds, scaring the soldiers into trembling. They all looked despondent, a mix of sadness and the grim determination of facing death. "Very good," Duke clapped his hands, a devilish smile on his face. "Congratulations, you made the correct choice, because, starting tomorrow, you will go one by one, into a big group." Before he could finish his sentence, Gilmer Hodge fell with a thud. "What?" someone exclaimed. "Oops, my head," Hodge groaned. In fact, the area around the stone pillars was covered with spells. For everyone except Captain America, the damage from falling was reduced by half. For example, a fracture would be reduced to a bone crack. If someone managed to get seriously injured, they could only blame themselves for being too careless. The soldiers were dumbfounded. They would fall one by one with a thud, but if they swarmed up, chaos would ensue. Everyone would focus on a pillar, and if one person jumped, another would follow, leading to collisions. The result was predictable. So, you'd better master it today. Otherwise, Duke warned. When Diana and the others passed this test, they did it as a group. It required not only coordination, but also the ability to respond quickly. It was common for 2 people to jump on a pillar, and not surprising for 3. What to do then? It depended on their reaction and adaptability. A group of soldiers, all with big heads, flopped around for the entire day, each ending up bruised and battered. Duke smiled, satisfied. His main focus was training Captain America. The captain had not received systematic training. He had only stayed in Camp Caspian for a week before becoming a muscular man with a doctorate. After that, he began selling bonds across the country. His fighting style relied on his extraordinary reflexes. But that wasn't enough. He could be stronger. Amazon's fighting skills would take him to the next level. End of this chapter. Haber, Chapter 79. I seem to have been tricked. Colonel Chester Phillips' mouth twitched. This is like making dumplings. Indeed, it was like making dumplings. On the stone pillar, people were falling down with a cacophony of sounds. 2, 3, or even 4 people would select a pillar at the same time and collide with each other. Some were slow to take off and were knocked down by those behind them. Some were intentional, while others were just plain unlucky. They were all big soldiers, young and full of energy, and after falling down a few times, they inevitably started cursing and fighting. At this point, you only needed to drop a basin of water from the sky to complete the scene. A week is neither short nor long. It passed quickly. Yes, congratulations to Steve Rogers, who cleared the stone pillars in 59.57 seconds and won the honor of having dinner with Agent Peggy Carter. Duke clapped his hands and then glanced playfully at Carter. Of course, in exchange, he received a pair of disapproving eyes. Captain America was still a little shy. He scratched his head and looked over expectantly. However, Carter shook her head, walked away, and left him feeling dejected. Don't be sad. Agent Carter may seem strong, but she's actually very shy inside, Duke said, putting his arm around Captain America's shoulders. Then, instructor, what should I do? Steve Rogers asked, still admiring the instructor after their 2 weeks together. Do I really have to teach you how to pick up girls? Duke rolled his eyes, looking exasperated. The key point was that he had no experience himself. Just remember one sentence. Don't be cowardly. Just do it. What? In the distance, Colonel Chester Phillips and Dr. Abraham Erskine were whispering. It seemed it was time for the final decision. Duke patted Captain America on the shoulder and said, The training is over. I will give you the last class tomorrow. As he spoke, he jumped off the stone pillar. As his feet touched the ground, mysterious magic circles lit up beneath him, and the stone pillar's circle disappeared. The soldiers looked at each other in disbelief. If it weren't for the dents caused by their falls, they would have thought it was a dream. The stone pillars had been tampered with, and only Steve Rogers could truly master Amazon's fighting skills, although it was just a form of body method. But his body coordination had become stronger, and when he became a muscular man, he would be able to exert his strength better. As for the others, they just became more flexible. Agent Carter returned at some point. Attention, she commanded. The soldiers hurriedly gathered together. In the distance, the 2 bigwigs were still having a heated discussion. You don't really want Rogers, do you? Phillips asked. No, I've decided it's him, Erskine replied. When you brought a 90-pound asthmatic cat into my unit, I didn't object. I thought, what the hell, maybe you just used him as a guinea pig. I never thought you would pick him. This kid's arms are thinner than noodles. I almost cried when I saw him. I value quality more than size. Hodge passed all the tests. He was strong, he was fast, he obeyed orders, he was a soldier. He's a bully. You can't win battles with kindness, Doctor. But Rogers also passed the training of Duke and Diana. Do you really think I can't see the tricks of the 2 of them? Although I don't understand what they did, I know they came for that asthmatic kid. Colonel Chester Phillips' mouth twitched in disdain. People's eyes are not old. During these 2 weeks, I could see clearly that Duke and Diana were here for Steve Rogers. Others fell down and howled, but Rogers didn't seem to be in such pain. With that guy's physical fitness, how could he not hurt when he fell? He was very disgusted with this kind of extremely purposeful behavior. Additionally, he didn't like the feeling of being dominated and the mysterious behavior of Duke and Diana. He was unable to place his trust in the duo of unknown origins, although Duke and Diana successfully destroyed the German High Command, hastening the German surrender. Despite his positive demeanor, Duke harbored a strong aversion to anything mysterious, which extended to his dislike for Steve Rogers. He couldn't understand why Duke and Diana had chosen this asthmatic kid. The final test, to win the battle, depends on courage, Duke announced as he pulled the pin and threw a metal object. "There's a grenade!" someone shouted. A group of soldiers scattered in all directions, panic evident on their faces. Only Steve Rogers rushed forward, using his body to shield the grenade. "Run! Hide!" they yelled. Then, nothing happened. It was a fake grenade. Duke smiled, turned, and walked away. The whole scene felt contrived and somewhat embarrassing. This was a military camp, after all. No colonel would throw a real grenade into a group of soldiers. It wasn't a battlefield. "He's still too thin," Colonel Chester Phillips muttered, leaving with a constipated expression. The next day, in the car heading to the Final Fate laboratory, "Can I invite you to dinner tonight?" Steve Rogers asked shyly. "Have I agreed?" Carter retorted, annoyed by Duke's lack of courtesy. Fortunately, Steve Rogers had won her over in the end. "But instructor, I am also your instructor." There will be dinner, but did I say when? Wait until you're in the mood." "Huh?" Steve Rogers scratched his head, feeling as if he had been tricked. "I know this neighborhood well. I was beaten in that alley, and that parking lot, and behind that restaurant." As they arrived at a familiar place, he quickly changed the subject, though it remained somewhat awkward. "Why don't you run away?" Captain America asked. "If you run once, you'll keep running. If you stand up and fight back, you'll have a chance one day, right?" "I feel a bit like you, always getting rejected," Captain America admitted. "I don't understand why you want to join the army. You're a beautiful woman. I mean, a beautiful secret agent, not just a lady. You're beautiful." He trailed off, feeling awkward. It had the opposite effect. "You don't know how to strike up a conversation with a woman, do you?" "This is probably the longest conversation I've ever had with a woman. They don't want to dance with a man who will step on their feet," Captain America said, laughing at himself. "After all these years, I don't care much anymore. I think I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" "A suitable dance partner." Agent Carter smiled but said nothing. This moment echoed the dancing theme at the end. For a long time, they didn't fully understand why they felt differently about each other. After a long time, they realized that both of them were people who tried hard to prove themselves. Perhaps this is why birds of a feather flock together. End of this chapter. Chapter 80. Remember to jump the plane. Duke walked slowly into the Brooklyn antique store. An old woman greeted him. "The weather is great today." "Yeah, but I always carry an umbrella," Duke laughed. The old woman was a minor character, just a small special actor with a single line. She was the one who had given Hydra a micro-punch. After the code was matched, the old woman went to the table and pressed a switch. Duke didn't go in immediately, but asked with a smile, "There's a car outside with the license plate number SM53A. Whose is it?" "SM553A? Oh, that's Mr. Greg Clemson's car from the State Department," the old woman replied. "The State Department?" Duke raised an eyebrow. "Does he have a problem?" The old woman became vigilant. "What, is there an issue?" "Oh, Duke began, but at that moment a violent explosion sounded. Even upstairs, they could feel the strong vibration. The old woman was dumbfounded. Something had really happened. She reached for the micro-punch to go in, but Duke grabbed her arm. "You stay here. The car with the license plate number SM553A outside is probably an enemy spy's. Don't go out and risk your life. Anyone who comes in with a gun must be killed." With that, Duke jumped in. "Arcane barrage," he shouted. Countless arcane rune arrows, as thick as a forearm, hit Greg Clemson, turning him into a sieve in an instant. The last super soldier serum he had stolen was also blown apart by the arcane barrage. Flames rose up, and the liquid medicine splashed around was instantly evaporated. "What the hell?" Duke muttered, brushing off the crumbs that hadn't even splashed on him. At the same time, Peggy Carter ran out with a gun. She was stunned when she saw Duke, then ran forward to check. The man was dead. "Who is this person?" Peggy Carter asked, still pretending not to know about Hydra. "The person is dead," she said angrily, kicking the corpse and looking at the shattered test tube debris. "Where is the serum? Why is there no more?" "What serum? What are you talking about? Oh, is it the super soldier serum? You said that's what he just took?" "Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't notice this. Sorry to have broken it," Duke said, putting on an "I don't know, don't blame me" look. Are you in the same group?" Peggy Carter stood up angrily, subconsciously wanting to point a gun at Duke, but quickly realized she was not his opponent. Bullets were probably useless. "Is your brain sick? If I were with him, I would have teleported him away and killed him. If I wanted the serum, I would have taken it away. I can't find it. Besides, I don't even like this crap," Duke said with contempt. "Isn't there a doctor? Just make more when it's gone." Peggy Carter gritted her teeth angrily. "The doctor was killed by him." "Ah, that's it, then I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, the car with the license plate number SM553A outside probably belonged to this guy. When I came in, they took a special look at it. My two eyes made me feel malicious. I was very puzzled, and I didn't know them. Why would they treat me badly?" Before she could finish her sentence, Peggy Carter bypassed him and rushed out. "Hey, where are you going?" Duke called after her. "To kill!" she shouted back. "What a fiery temper. I hope that boy Steve Rogers can handle it," Duke said with a smile, walking inside. It was time to harvest the fruit. Dr. Abraham Erskine pointed to Captain America's chest, probably meaning, "Don't forget your original intention and be a good person," and then closed his eyes permanently. Captain America's eyes were red with anger. He rushed out suddenly and then froze in an instant. "Instructor, why are you here?" Captain America asked, stunned. "Are you Steve Rogers? Looks like they made it." "No, you made it. Yes, getting taller. Is it weird that I'm here? I said I was going to give you one last lesson. Of course I'm coming." "Sorry, instructor. I'll talk about the old days later. I have to go first." "Hey, wait a minute," Duke said, holding a hand on Captain America's chest. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move an inch. "I thought I didn't become bald, but instead grew taller and stronger. Who would have thought that I still wouldn't be able to last a round against the instructor?" "I've already killed the man," Duke said. "Then, what about the serum?" Captain America asked. "I don't know what serum it was. I accidentally shattered it," Duke shrugged. "Huh?" Captain America's mouth gradually opened wide in surprise. "Ah, what? I would have come here sooner. But who wants to oversleep?" When I arrived, I heard a boom from inside. Before I could figure out what happened, a guy ran out and shot at me. Of course, I had to fight back. Who knows what serum he was holding? Duke explained. The kind-hearted Captain America never imagined that Duke was lying. Slowly walking towards the corpse, he saw the glass shards scattered and the serum already gone. He had hoped to collect some more. Gunfire sounded outside. "What happened?" Captain America asked. "Oh, your girlfriend is out there arresting his accomplice," Duke replied. "Crab special," Steve Rogers cursed as he jumped out, though he wasn't cursing at Duke. "By the way, the last lesson is to tell you, remember to jump off the plane," Duke called out. "Ah?" Steve Rogers, who was rushing out, was full of questions. "Jumping off the plane? What plane? Is that the last class? What the hell is this?" The lab was a mess. "Colonel, are you a failure?" Colonel Chester Phillips was visibly angry. Hearing the words, he snapped. "Why are you here? Your training is over, and you are automatically relieved of your duties." "Who is he?" Senator Bullard asked. "Oh, this is my uncle, who is also the special instructor invited this time," Howard Stark quickly explained. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" Senator Bullard didn't like seeing a yellow-skinned man in their secret white laboratory. "Guards! Don't shout. I'll leave." "By the way, this is for you," Duke said, handing a letter to Colonel Chester Phillips. "What's this?" the colonel asked. "The doctor's suicide note and last words," Duke replied. "What?" Colonel Chester Phillips froze for a moment, then quickly opened the letter and began to read. "If one day I die, please hand over my body to Mr. Duke, and he will handle it." Actually, Dr. Erskine wanted to commit suicide. He didn't want to become a tool for making super soldiers. After completing his life's research, he felt it was worth it. It's just a pity that he didn't get the chance to commit suicide. He was. Duke waved his hand, and Dr. Erskine's body was suspended in the air. Under the surprised eyes of everyone, he slowly walked out. "Goodbye," Duke said. End of this chapter.